Hi, folks. Thanks for gathering. Glad to see everybody's down here. I'm going to go ahead and call the Missoula City Council meeting for January 12th to order at 6:01 p.m. this evening. And before we get started with our agenda, if you'll join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic of the nation. All right. Thank you very much. I'll just mention for folks that are here tonight, no doubt many of you are here for the start for our public hearing this evening for code reform work, and great to see so many folks here. If you are here for public comment for an agenda item that is not on, for public comment on items that are not on the agenda, there's a sign-up sheet out in the hallway there. We allow 20 minutes at the beginning of the meeting, and then we accommodate as many folks as we can get done during that period. And then we have another period in the agenda where public comment for items that are not on the agenda will be heard, but it's after all of the business items and publicly notified items for City Council to cover. So just to give you a heads up, if you're here to comment on something that's on the agenda, you do not need to sign up. All right. So, Ms. Trimble, will you do a roll call for us, please?
Happy to. Beginning with Anderson.
Present.
Becerra.
Present.
Campbell.
Here.
Trask.
Present.
Jones.
Present.
Jordan.
Present.
McCoy.
Here.
Nelson.
Present.
Nugent.
Present.
Ponton.
Present.
Savage.
Present.
And I believe Cheryl is absent.
Correct. That is correct. Okay. Looks like we have a quorum. Thank you. Next, we'll take a look at the minutes from January 5th, 2026. If any council members have any changes or questions for those minutes? I'm not seeing any. All right. Minutes for January 5th, 2026 will remain as submitted. Thank you. Next is our committee schedule for this coming Wednesday, January 14th. The agenda says 2025, but it's 2026. We're still in that weird window. This coming Wednesday. Ms. Trimble, would you like to go ahead and cover any changes or important details for the upcoming committees this Wednesday?
There are no changes that I'm aware of. We are starting at 9 a.m. And then we are going to begin the land use discussion at 9:35 and continue with possibly some breaks in there that are to be determined. We left the break times to be determined based on the tempo of the conversation.
Okay, great. Great, thank you. That committee meeting will be the first of two specific land use and planning committee meetings that are set aside for this process. And all those materials can be found online on the City Council meeting schedule on the City of Missoula's website. And links or to participate virtually are found online. And of course, you're welcome to come in person as well. And we encourage it. All right. Next up, we have special presentations and proclamations, and we don't have any neighborhood council updates this evening, any neighborhood council leadership team updates, but we do have one proclamation. I'll wait for Ms. Trimble to share that on screen, and I'll go ahead and start to read that here. Okay. Whereas through Martin Luther King Jr.'s courage and powerful message of hope and nonviolence, he devoted his life to addressing injustice, racism, and fear with peaceful protests. Unity and understanding, moving millions of Americans to enact profound social changes. And whereas he endured imprisonment and adversity in the form of verbal and physical attacks, threats, arrests, and ultimately was assassinated in an effort to diminish his great dream of freedom and equality for all people. And whereas our nation remembers Dr. King's commitment to the principles of this nation, which he championed through his unyielding faith in justice and unwavering belief in freedom and equality for all. And whereas we strive to be a welcoming and inclusive community where we can continue to deepen our understanding and practice of providing equal dignity, respect, and opportunity for all who live and visit here. And whereas Dr. King's legacy and writings teach us that we are ultimately measured not by where we stand in moments of comfort and convenience, but by what we take on during times of challenge and controversy. Now, therefore, I, Andrea Davis, Mayor of the City of Missoula in the state of Montana, hereby recognize January 19th, the third Monday in January 2026, as Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Thank you. All right, thanks, folks. Thank you. That does wrap up our special presentations and proclamations. I'll take a moment and mention that we'll hear from general comments from the public next, again, for that first 20-minute portion of the meeting. And then we'll move into our public hearings this evening, of which we have two. And these are dedicated to the effort with the Our Missoula 2045 land use plan, and of course the code reform works, the adoption and the Unified Development Code and zoning map. There will not be a vote taken tonight. I just want to make sure that we're clear with the folks, and we'll go through this a number of times in terms of the public meeting schedule and public hearing. Tonight is the public hearing, and then it will move back to the Land Use and Planning Committee on Wednesday. And then because there is no city council meeting on the 19th of January, there'll be another committee meeting the following Wednesday on the 21st. So that gives ample time for there to be discussion of comment and amendments and those kinds of things. And then we will have the proposed final adoption on January 26th, on Monday, January 26th. Okay. Beyond that, that's really the bulk of our business tonight. We've got consent agenda, and that's really about it. So we'll go ahead and get started. We'll move to public comment for items that are not on the agenda. The first period of public comment, as I mentioned earlier, is limited to 20 minutes total, with up to 3 minutes allotted per speaker. Each person may speak once per meeting in regards to general public comments not on the agenda. In-person comments take precedence, and sign-ups is required and follows a first-come, first-served basis. The second period of public comment on items not on the agenda will follow immediately after the conclusion of all regular business and continue until all comments have been taken. So with that, we do have some folks that have signed up to make public comment this evening, and the first is Grace Decker. Come on up, I'll get the microphone turned on for you. And please state your name for the record, despite me saying your name to call you up. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thanks. My name is Grace Decker, D-E-C-K-E-R, and I live over in Ward 1. Thank you all for the time to be able to speak, and thank you all for your service. Congratulations to those of you who've just recently been sworn in. Like I am sure many of you are, I have been increasingly and then terrifyingly alarmed by the actions of ICE in our country. Over the past year, 26 people have died in ICE custody or by ICE actions. And of course, last week's killing of a 37-year-old mother in Minnesota has alarmed the nation. I am really glad that you kicked things off, Madam Mayor, with the proclamation about Martin Luther King Jr. Day, because the comments at the end of that proclamation about how we will be remembered, not for how we act in times of comfort, but in times of challenge and uncertainty, that could not be more applicable right now. It's time for courage, and it's time to be proactive. It's incredibly important that this council and this mayor take action to reassure our most vulnerable neighbors at this time by communicating clearly about our intentions and values as a community when ICE comes, which they surely will. It's simply a matter of time. All of you recently or more long ago have taken a vow or an oath to defend the Constitution. The Constitution protects people from some of the kinds of actions that we've seen ICE agents take all across the country. Illegal searches and seizures, acting without proper warrants, and acting to remove people without due process from their homes, from their workplaces, from their schools, from their child care facilities. As a council and as a mayor, you can clarify the boundaries that exist between city staff and federal agents, and what federal agents will and will not be allowed to do on public property and in our community. And you can be in touch with other cities to learn about what is happening and to learn about what they are doing to take action to protect their most vulnerable citizens. Many of these things may be taking place already, and I commend you if so. Thank you for that. I will say, though, that many of our citizens may not know you personally and may not have an assumption that these actions are taking place behind closed doors if they do not hear clear statements of support and courage from our elected leaders. We will all be tested over the coming year. I am sure you wish, as many of us do, that this challenge had not come while you are in leadership. But it surely will. Thank you in advance, and I urge you to call upon your moral compass and your courage in the times that are to come.
Thank you, Ms. Decker. Thanks for coming down this evening. I appreciate that. And thanks for all the enthusiasm in the audience this evening, but I do ask that folks do hold their applause. We ask you for this because there's times when people are going to make comments that you don't agree with, and there are going to be folks that you do agree with. And we want this place, this space to be somewhere where folks can feel like they can provide comment regardless. So thank you. I know the enthusiasm is great for many things. Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay. Next person up for public comment is Eli Harmon.
I'm Eli Harmon, East Missoula resident. What I wanted to bring up that maybe needs to be at least made available to the public to know what's going on is, with it seems being the last year or so, the driving effort with the UDC and everything, and what you hear a lot might be the driving factor behind it is trying to make affordable housing. My big concern about that is, where does it explain to anybody what's being used or defined as affordable housing? We're like the dollar numbers that would explain that to the general people who are trying to etch out a living here in our town. I've got some younger relatives, and even at $20 an hour, they're struggling to afford $1,500 a month rent for a one-bedroom apartment. 2-bedroom, $2,000. You throw a cat, you throw car insurance, you throw a phone bill on top of that, they can't make that. So if we're looking to develop every square inch of this valley that we can, is it really going to be affordable housing? Or is it just to keep bringing more and more people from everywhere that we can think of that have money, still putting everybody who is locally can afford it? So I guess my biggest question is whether anyone here can explain or point to the website somewhere that, the general people can look and see, well, what is going to be affordable housing for me? What can I afford? Am I going to have to get 2 jobs or 3 jobs? Because in addition to rent, the average median cost of a house in Missoula right now is $550,000 plus. No one making $20 an hour can afford that. And half the population are either single or students or widowed or whatever, or elderly at least, and none of them have that kind of income. So affordable housing, what does it mean? And what are the dollars associated with that to get to that point? And that's what I was just hoping could be identified for us. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments this evening, Mr. Harmon. That is all of the folks that have signed up for public comment for items that are not on the agenda, but we do have a little bit of time if you'd like to come up and speak to items that are not on the agenda. Come on up.
Hi, my name's Katie Thompson. I appreciate what the last gentleman said. That is part of my concern, once again, and I will keep showing up every week, about the new development, Midtown Commons. What's proposed is not in alignment with all the studies that we've spent taxpayer dollars on as far as affordable housing, like the gentleman, I love it, I'm not associated. We really need to know what the numbers are when you're talking about that. As far as Midtown Commons, the park also is not in alignment with the increased density. So I just think if we're going to spend all taxpayer dollars to purchase this land, which we did, and then taxpayer dollars to do all of the studies over, you guys are the experts on all of the studies with the pros and the things that you reference, I think we should utilize them. Otherwise, it's pointless. So the 1.3 acre park is nowhere near sufficient for the existing population, let alone the density that's being proposed there. Also, senior housing. Our population is aging here in Montana. I believe in your statistics it was going to increase to 20%. So it'd be great to see affordable housing there and senior housing. Also, when I did talk with, the head of the, Annette, the leader of MRA, when I talked about the rents that the developer, she said, well, the developer has to be able to make a profit. And it's like, what angle are we coming from? Are we coming from the angle of what citizens want to see? We purchase the land with our tax dollars. So at any rate, when I discussed rents, which this gentleman brought up, she said, well, it's not going to be high end, it's not going to be low end. We own 2 fourplexes in Missoula. I know we can charge whatever we want. I guess I'm still in touch with what it takes to make it, and I know we're not charging top dollar. Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your comments this evening, Ms. Thompson. Anybody else wishing to make comment on items that are not on the agenda? Any public comment for items that are not on the agenda?
Rough. Hi, Jana Richter, Ward 3. I'll have more comments related to agenda items later, but I just wanted to make a couple general comments about community engagement and the role of local government. I think it's really incredible to see the number of people who are in the room today, and to also look around and see that I am one of maybe a few people under the age of 40 who are in this room today. And I think that when we think about who has the ability to pour through, I think often dense materials related to city policy, we have to consider that the people who are most impacted by the policies that we're making are often the people who cannot make it to meetings like this and who don't have the time to pour through city documents on a website because they have young kids, because they're working nights, because they are already thinking of so many other priorities to make ends meet. And so while I think community engagement in Missoula has really improved over the past few years that I've witnessed, I think that there's a lot of room for growth that we should all think about, and how the city prioritizes community engagement moving forward. And with that, with the role of local government changing, I think we've seen that programs throughout Montana have been cut this past year. The Montana eviction program has been cut. The Montana Fair Housing program has been cut. Johnson Street Shelter has closed. A lot of local governments are required to, I think, answer questions that they haven't had to answer before in the same caliber. And I really do think that city council and a lot of city council and other jobs are full-time jobs, and to meaningfully engage community and meet folks in the community and the spaces that they're living and working requires full attention. And so would just offer that as a seed of perhaps moving toward a model of government where our officials can put full-time energy and are paid a full-time wage to do this job. It requires a lot of time, effort, and active community engagement throughout your neighborhoods that you're representing. And I think we need to be emphasizing that more and more as the role of local government. shifts and becomes more inundated with issues that historically we've had state and federal assistance on, but are slowly realizing that we are not, the state and federal government are not coming to save us, and we're going to have to do more and more all the time as a local government to treat people with care and to take care of each other. So thank you.
Thank you, Jana. All right. Any other, let's see, we have a few minutes left if anybody else would like to share public comment for items that are not on the agenda. I'm not seeing anybody in the room, and I'll check online. Anybody online wanting to make public comment on items not on the agenda? Okay, I don't see any hands raised. Great. We'll go ahead and we will conclude that portion of our agenda. And next we'll move on to our first public hearing this evening. Let's read a little blip here about public hearings to help people have some context. State law and city council rules set guidelines for inviting community comment in a formal way on certain issues. Following a staff report on each item, the city council and the mayor invite community comment. City council holds a public hearing on the item. A member of council makes a motion and a vote is taken. The public hearing and vote take place on the same night unless there is a reason to hold the vote over to a later meeting date. And this is just one instance I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting. We will not be taking action, the city council will not be taking action on the adoption of the Unified Development Code and zoning map this evening. That will occur scheduled for January 26th. But this is the public hearing. So glad you're here. So if you're here to make comment and engage with the council, it's a great time to do that. So with that, we'll go ahead and kick it off with item 6.1, amendments to the Our Missoula 2045 land use plan. We have staff member Aaron Pehan, who is here to kick that off. And Aaron, before I ask you to start, you're going to provide the staff report on that? Great, thank you. I know that many of you in the audience have been following and engaging with this closely. Thank you. It's been fantastic. I have to say it's very exciting to be sitting here today at a point in which, as a community, we have been discussing updating our land use plan and land use regulations in order to create more affordable and attainable housing options, to create more predictability and consistency, both for folks that are building homes as well as those that are looking to rent and to buy, and then those that are looking to build a commercial business and open a business. It's been something the city has heard from the public for quite some time. This is an area of opportunity. This was an effort that's been underway for a number of years now. And again, many of you have been engaged from the beginning. This has been a 3-year process. So thank you very much for that and your continued engagement. There was several updates by the Montana legislature starting in 2023 that substantively shaped the direction that the city had to take on a number of fronts. There are some things that we had to make amendments and change our current zoning code immediately to put those state requirements in place. We're at a place now where this, and as when I mention a land use plan, it's sort of like the growth policy that we had for many years. We called it a growth policy. By state law, it's now called a land use plan. Cities the size of Missoula are required to have that land use plan in place, and we have achieved that. That has been in place since December of 2024. So the first piece that you'll hear tonight from our Director of Planning and Development and Innovation Department is updates to that plan, because before we can put code in place that implements that plan, we have to make sure that plan is updated effectively and accurately. So with that, I'll hand it over to Ms. Pehan. Oh, excuse me, Aaron, before you get started, come on up, but Councilor Nugent?
Thanks, Mayor Davis. I wanted to clarify, when it comes to public comment, are we going to do 6.1 and 6.2 at the same time? Because I think sometimes the public,
Yes.
the comments kind of overlap, but I don't want people to get up and be in the wrong place or not.
I appreciate that very much. Thank you. Yes, thanks for clarifying that. We'll do public comment for both amendments to the our Missoula 2045 land use plan and the adoption of the Unified Development Code and Zoning Map. Thank you very much for that. Okay, we're ready.
Right, good evening, Erin Pahan with Community Planning Development and Innovation. Tonight, we open the official public hearing on the Missoula Unified Development Code, the updates to the Our Missoula 2045 Land Use Plan, and the adoption of a zoning map. Work that has been years in the making, rooted in a simple but urgent charge to update our land use rules so they reflect today's Missoula while helping us meet tomorrow's needs. From the beginning, our goals have been clear: to align our regulations with our Missoula 2045 land use plan, to modernize a code that was increasingly hard to use and even harder to administer, and to create a framework that supports more housing choices, more predictable outcomes, and better designed growth. We also set out to achieve Missoula's climate goals by encouraging more compact, efficient development patterns that make it easier to build and to live in walkable neighborhoods, with your daily needs closer to home and more options to get around without relying on a car. At its core, this effort is about ensuring more people can find safe, attainable places to live while continuing to value things that make Missoula Missoula: our neighborhoods, our natural areas, and our sense of community. This has also been one of the most extensive community planning efforts Missoula has undertaken. Over the last 3 years, we have asked thousands of questions, received thousands of answers, held countless conversations and open houses, community meetings, stakeholder roundtables, work sessions, and through online tools and written feedback, received thousands of comments. People showed up with hopes, concerns, lived experiences, and ideas, sometimes in agreement, sometimes in tension, always because they cared deeply about this place. What is before you tonight is not simply a technical document or a map. It's a product of that engagement. This work has also required sustained commitment from key stakeholders who have leaned in again and again over the last 3 years because they understand what is at stake. Our nonprofit housing providers brought the daily reality of housing insecurity and the operational challenges of delivering true, deeply affordable housing. Advocacy groups helped keep equity and access and environmental responsibility front and center. Our builders, developers, and design professionals engaged in the hard details, where the rules succeed, where they break down, and what predictability really looks like on a site plan and in a pro forma. Our neighborhood leaders and residents pushed us to be clearer, more practical, and more accountable. None of these perspectives alone could have produced a lasting result. Together, they shape a code that is both aspirational and workable, one that can actually be implemented project by project, block by block, and that can be tested, built upon, and improved in the months and the years to come. So finally, I want to recognize the extraordinary work of city staff throughout this process. This effort has demanded technical expertise, sturdy leadership, and an uncommon level of responsiveness and care across many departments. Staff have balanced big picture policy with page-by-page code drafting. They have translated community values into measurable standards. They have shown up night after night to listen, explain, revise, and try again. And they have done this while continuing to deliver daily public services that include reviewing projects and permits, answering questions, supporting boards and commissions, and keeping the work moving ahead. The truth is that every group involved, community members, stakeholders, and staff, have made sacrifices over the last 3 years. Time away from family and work, evenings spent in meetings, patience through complexity, and willingness to stay at the table through disagreement. Many of those folks who were at the initial launch 3 years ago are in this room with us today, and I think that's a testament to the collaborative nature of this project. That shared effort really stands Missoula's values at the forefront, our collective desire to build a city where more people can belong. So with that context and framing, I will pass it over to Emily Gluckin and Madsen Matthias to walk us through the land use amendment changes.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Pehan. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Erin. Good evening, everybody. My name is Emily Gluckin. I am a senior planner with the City of Missoula and one of the project managers for the Our Missoula project. Just want to make a quick clarification that this presentation will cover both agenda items. So we'll be providing information for both topics. There we go. Quick overview of the agenda. We are going to spend a little bit of time on project background and setting up really the why. Why are we doing this code reform right now? Madsen is going to talk through the land use plan amendments, and then we'll pass it over to Cassie to give us an overview of the Unified Development Code and the zoning map, and then we'll conclude with what's to come after this meeting. And I'll just start off with a refresher of the materials that are associated with this project. So far, there's quite a bit, so I wanted to call them out as we get started. On the left-hand side of this screen, I have all of the attachments that are associated with the project record and around the UDC itself, and we have 9 attachments and then a staff report. And these are really all of the materials that will be considered in the adoption. And then on the right-hand side, since we have uploaded the adoption draft materials, staff have created a number of memorandums that just add a little bit more context and background and explanation. So we'll point you to those for more information. We have a summary of the Planning Commission public hearing that took place prior to this City Council hearing. We have an updated list of staff recommended amendments that City Council will consider in their adoption of this item, as well as map amendments, and then our remaining memos are informational background that will help set up this item. And I just want to also plug that staff will be sharing another memo at the end of the week with a small number of additional staff recommended amendments, and these are really focused on cleanup and include small fixes or oversights that we previously missed. And this is to be considered in addition to the updated staff recommended amendments that we published on January 5th. So one more memo coming soon. So let's dive into the project background. And I'm going to start off pretty high level with talking about what is zoning reform. Zoning reform has emerged as an important policy topic across the country, really in response to rising rents and home prices, racial and economic inequities, and impacts of climate change. Many cities are currently or already have explored best practices like eliminating single-family zoning, eliminating parking minimums, promoting missing middle housing, allowing ADUs, and encouraging adaptive reuse. Examples of other cities that have already undergone zoning reforms include Fort Collins, Boise, Salt Lake City, Lakewood, Colorado, Minneapolis, Spokane, and Portland, Oregon, to name a few. And zoning reform is also taking place at the statewide level. Many states have already passed or are actively considering legislation relating to zoning and land use, and Montana is included in this. So why are we reforming the code in Missoula specifically? First, our community priorities have evolved. In December 2024, we updated our community priorities for growth when we adopted the new our Missoula 2045 land use plan. And our codes are how we implement this vision on the ground, so we need to make sure that they're updated and in line with this new vision. Second, we need to modernize our development codes. The last time our code was fully updated was in 2009 and has only really seen incremental updates over the years. So we're due for a fairly significant update to bring us to where we are in 2026. And the third reason is that our current code is difficult to navigate for all users. Our development regulations are complicated and are currently spread across multiple documents and often conflict with one another. So this effort is really inspired by streamlining our codes, making them easier to understand, and getting them all in one place. Over the course of this project, we have performed some analyses that also point towards the need for an update. During the land use plan process in the earlier phases of our Missoula, we analyzed how our population has grown in the last decade. We were seeing about a 1% annual population growth for the years between 2010 and 2020. And then since the pandemic, we saw the rate of population growth in Missoula rise to nearly 2% annually, so almost double the steady rate that we saw for that decade prior. We also analyzed how we anticipate our population to continue growing in the future and projected what our housing needs will be. The area that includes Missoula and some area around it is expected to grow by 1.39% annually by 2045, and this will add about 37,000 people to the area. The previous growth policy underestimated our housing needs, and our data shows that as of 2021, we had underproduced between 2,000 and 4,000 housing units. According to the projected population growth and this underproduction of housing, we estimate that we will need to essentially double the amount of housing units that we are producing per year for the next 10 years to produce or to meet housing needs by producing between 1,100 and 1,500 housing units per year. The equity and land use report that we published earlier in this project gave us some insight into how our historic zoning patterns have influenced equity, and especially when it comes to housing affordability. Since our first zoning map that was established in 1932, we have seen more and more of the city limited to lower density housing options. By 2022, which is still how our zoning exists today, almost half of the residential land area in the city was dedicated to exclusive single dwelling housing, and only about 14% allowed multi-dwelling housing. This shift is an equity issue because today most households in Missoula can't afford a single dwelling house. Areas that are zoned for exclusive single dwelling homes or duplexes account for over 2/3 of the city's land area, but less than 1/3 of Missoula's households can afford those housing options. In addition to our equity and land use report, our consultants also performed a code diagnostic where they analyzed all of our development codes and all of our review processes and identified 4 key findings. First, they found that our codes as they exist today present barriers to housing supply, equity, and affordability. They found that codes present barriers to compatible infill development and limit housing diversity. They found that our codes do not support our already existing mobility and climate policies. And they found that codes are difficult to navigate for all users. And then finally, Missoula is updating our codes because we have to. In 2023, about halfway through the Missoula project, the state of Montana passed the Montana Land Use and Planning Act that significantly changed the framework for land use planning in the state. The law requires the city to adopt a new land use plan, which we did last December, as well as new zoning, a new zoning map, and new subdivision regulations that are in alignment with this newly adopted land use plan. The cities in Montana that are subject to this law are required to provide analyses and projections of current land use data, especially to inform the update of the land use plan, and this was all documented in the community profile that is an appendix to the land use plan. For the update of the zoning code, the act mandates that specific housing strategies be integrated into the code, which we have achieved in our proposed unified development code. And most notably, the act shifts the way that projects will be reviewed. Many projects that previously had a public process will be reviewed administratively once we adopt the new code. I want to just give some quick background on what a typical land use process looks like. It generally begins with community visioning, then leads to crafting land use policy, turning that policy into a future land use map, creating a zoning map and associated zoning regulations, and then finally it leads to the development of buildings, streets, so on, that translate our visions into our physical environment. The timeline for our Missoula has followed a very similar flow. You may have seen this timeline many times over the past 3 years, and this has been our key roadmap for the project. We began in 2022 with a community-wide launch of the project. And then the second phase, which primarily took place in 2023, focused on defining the problem by looking at our existing conditions and learning about community priorities. We solidified what we learned and what we heard into possible scenarios for growth that we then had the community share their preference on. The fourth phase is when we adopted the Our Missoula 2045 land use plan. This again was in December 2024. And then the majority of 2025 and the beginning of this year has focused on updating our development codes, and that brings us to our current and final phase, which is the adoption of the Unified Development Code and a new zoning map. A note on the main materials of the Our Missoula project. The first key piece was the update of our land use plan, and this document really establishes the foundation for why we are doing certain things and sets the stage for the code updates to follow. The second piece is the Unified Development Code, or we also refer to this as a UDC. A UDC contains all city regulations that relate to development, including zoning, subdivision, and engineering codes. And the code is what tells us what is required and where it is required. And then the third piece is the City of Missoula Standards and Specifications Manual, which gets more specific about how things get developed, especially as it pertains to development in the right-of-way, like street design, for example. This document in particular will go through a separate adoption process, but the manual and the UDC talk to each other, so we consider it a component of this process. During the land use plan process, we hosted 18 community-wide events. We attended over 150 meetings with stakeholders and community groups, and we heard from well over 3,000 people with direct comments. Throughout the engagement cycles, we learned how land use impacts Missoulians, especially as it relates to equity and their lived experience in the city. We've learned what Missoulians value most in their neighborhoods, and we've learned about the type of growth that Missoulians would like to see. And we translated that, what we learned about the types of growth that people would like to see, into the types of places that people would want to see throughout the city. And from there, we developed the aptly named place types that reflect what we heard. Place types describe the intended physical outcomes for an area and provide recommendations for future streets, blocks, lots, buildings, and uses. We also incorporated what we learned about community priorities into the 6 themes of the land use plan. These are focus inward, housing choice and access, community and quality of life, environmental quality and climate resilience, health and safety, and economic health. While the land use plan is focused specifically on land use, it covers and balances a lot of topics and priorities. Just as an example, we have key objectives in the theme of housing choice and access, but we also have key objectives around climate resilience, like providing adequate tree cover throughout the city. So our job now is to turn these policy objectives and our geographic goals for growth into a zoning map and a code that lets that vision come to life on the ground. Throughout 2025, we focused public engagement on the steps between the land use plan and the development of the map and the code, and especially making sure that the public is aware of this coming change to the zoning. The engagement that we did over the last year included sending a postcard to every resident and property owner in the city. We held several meetings with frequent code users and folks that use the code very regularly. We had a number of events with community groups like the Missoula Organization of Realtors. We held several meetings with our Missoula Community Advisory Group. We had 2 larger community-wide open houses in the fall that focus on the zoning framework and then the UDC overall as a way to get this information to the public at large. In between all of that, we had meetings and events with community groups and stakeholders. We did tabling opportunities like city chats in the park. We've done quite a bit of web and newsletter outreach, and then have really used our virtual opportunities, like getting comments through Engage Missoula, email, stuff like that. So I am going to conclude the background there, and I will pass it over to Madsen, who is going to talk to us about land use plan amendments.
Thank you, Emily.
Hey,
Madsen.
good evening, everyone. I am Madsen Matthias, the senior planner with the City of Missoula, here to explain how and why the land use plan is changing right now and what those changes look like. The plan is amended to reflect the new land use information and impacts that were discovered during the drafting and review of the UDC. These changes to the plan are a net neutral or positive. They're modernizing content, strengthening policies, and reflecting even more community feedback. Because of their relationship to the UDC, these amendments are following the same adoption timeline as the UDC, but they're on an entirely separate process. They are an entirely separate process. Plan amendments are adopted by resolution, whereas the UDC is an ordinance to be adopted. Therefore, these 2 items must be voted on separately, though they appear before you at the same time. So now let's get into what these amendments are and what they look like. There are 2 types of changes happening in the land use plan. The edits are to the text and edits to the map, the place types map. On the text side, we're updating the listed zoning districts that relate to each place type from those in Title 20 to the new districts in the UDC. We've allowed childcare in industrial and employment areas, clarified that the street types map is illustrative, added the airport hazard area as a development constraint, and renamed industrial mixed use to transitional mixed use to better reflect its purpose and the associated change in the UDC. On the place types map, the amendments are in targeted key areas. They are based on information that arose as a part of developing the UDC and that changed staff's recommendation for the appropriate land use designation in these areas. So now, part of West Broadway is changed to industrial and employment. A section of Sotupkane has been redesignated urban mixed-use low. Parks and conservation areas citywide have been aligned with the PROST plan's recommendations. Some university-owned parcels are now civic. A developing commercial node on Upper Miller Creek Road is moving to mixed use. The Upper Rattlesnake Winery has been expanded to allow additional agricultural uses, and 1 block in the riverfront neighborhood is shifting to mixed use. And that's it. So for more information on the amendments and for visuals of the map changes, please see the attachments on the agenda. And now that you have all this background, Cassie will walk you through the content of the UDC. Thank you.
Thank you, Madsen. Nice to have you, Cassie.
Yeah. So I'm Cassie Trepard. I'm a planning supervisor with the city. Thank you, Madsen. So on to the new Unified Development Code. The Unified Development Code will be Title 22. The Unified Development Code is the culmination of what was previously 7 different titles. On the screen is the table of contents showing what types of regulations exist in the code. Chapter 1 establishes the foundation for the Unified Development Code. It covers a lot of the legal basics, like the official title of the UDC, the effective date, and requirement for development to comply with the code. Under the effective date, there is language stating people will have the choice to submit projects under the current code or under the new code during a transition period to allow for more flexibility. At the end of Chapter 1 are transitional provisions. The transitional provisions describe how previous zoning approvals are honored and how projects in process continue. The code intends to provide flexibility and respects that the design and construction process is lengthy and costly. Chapter 2 pulls together information that applies across the code, similar to Chapter 1. Chapter 2 addresses the responsibilities of Development Review Staff, Planning Commission, and Historic Preservation Commission, all in one consolidated location. Chapter 2 contains noticing requirements and a process crosswalk, which is essentially a table of contents for procedures and applications throughout the code. State law resulted in updates to the appeal process, and since appeals can apply to any chapter in the code, the process is hosted in Chapter 2. And last, there is one set of standardized regulations related to violations that govern the entire code. Zoning is covered in Chapter 4. The new zoning chapter contains 15 articles. That is 7 fewer articles than the current Title 20 zoning code. A lot of simplification and reorganization has taken place. The chapter covers the zoning districts and related standards, historic preservation regulations, sign code, zoning processes, and environmentally targeted regulations like landscaping and riparian management. The land use plan uses place types to provide guidance on the characteristics of each area on the future land use map. These characteristics translate into zoning district standards. In other words, the districts and requirements in the zoning all come from the adopted place types. And per state law, Planning Commission determined the zoning districts, with amendments, substantially comply with the land use plan. Building off of the place types, the new zoning districts are organized by context. The districts are organized into 3 buckets: residential, mixed use, and special use. Ultimately, there are 22 new zoning districts. There are 7 residential districts, 7 mixed-use districts, and 8 special-use districts, all corresponding to the place types in the land use plan. The zoning district standards are covered in Articles 4.2, 4.3, and 4.4 of the UDC. There are 7 residential districts. There is 1 rural district, 2 limited urban residential districts, 2 urban residential low districts, and 3 urban residential high districts. And note that the UR2 zoning district can apply to either the urban residential low or urban residential high place type. Building types are regulated in each district. Overall, all residential districts allow more diverse permitted building types than the current code, which can increase housing options across the city. The code regulates the maximum number of dwelling units allowed in buildings. This tool controls for form and scale to promote neighborhood compatibility. It mitigates the impacts of increased density. For example, one of the limited urban districts only allows for a maximum of 4 units in each apartment building. As the districts get more intense, like the urban residential districts, more units are allowed per building. A development might have a large enough parcel to allow for many units, and someone might develop multiple buildings on that parcel, but those buildings will be in scale with the neighborhood. There are traditional density maximums and parcel area per dwelling unit for the rural and limited urban residential zoning districts. We know Missoula needs more housing. However, some areas are better suited to take on more housing than others. For areas with transportation and environmental constraints, allowing for more housing while also limiting the number of units is important. The code also uses floor area ratio. Similar to the maximum number of units per building, this tool is primarily used to control the size of buildings to ensure development is compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. Though the maximum floor area ratio does restrict density, it doesn't put a strict cap on the number of units allowed. This provides more flexibility in creation of housing. Floor area ratio regulates the gross floor area of the building in relation to the lot size. For example, if we were looking at a 7,800 square foot lot in UR3, the floor area ratio would allow a 7,020 square foot building.
Within this, someone could fit 8 two-bedroom units, or they could build 11 one-bedroom units. The building for these two options would have the same size limit, and the overall size of the structure is controlled, but the developer has some more flexibility in how much housing they are choosing to provide in that structure. Rural and limited urban residential districts require a minimum lot width that applies to new subdivisions approved after adoption of this code, as well as lots created through subdivision exemptions. This tool replaces minimum parcel area requirements from Title 20 and substantially reduces the requirement. This allows for small lot development and more affordable home ownership opportunities. The new code has reduced setbacks from the previous Title 20 setbacks. This allows more flexibility in building placement and opens up more space for housing. The other tools that control for building scale mitigate the impacts of reduced setbacks. The maximum height limit in all but 2 residential zoning districts is 35 feet. This allows for 3 stories, and today the majority of residential districts in the current Title 20 zoning code allows up to 35 feet. The maximum height limit is taller in the limited urban 2 district and the urban residential 4 district and allows for 4 stories. These districts allow more density than the other districts within their respective place types and are set to the maximum heights listed in the land use plan. The land use plan includes information about how much of the block a single structure should occupy. For example, some place types call for half-block development and some call for less. The maximum building width is set to this place type characteristic to regulate building scale. Moving on to mixed-use districts, the land use plan says to unlock the growth potential for mixed-use centers and corridors in order to allow more people to live within walking distance of their daily needs. Create opportunities for more affordable housing types, and allow more people to live closer to transit services. The 2 standards on the screen support this statement. All of the building types are permitted in the mixed-use districts to allow for housing diversity near services, job, and transit. There are no density maximums or floor area ratio requirements in the mixed-use districts in order to promote housing construction in these areas. There are no maximum number of dwelling unit requirements for apartment buildings, row houses, and mixed-use buildings in these districts. So in other words, developers are able to build as many units as they can fit on a lot within the height limit and other restrictions. There are 3 mixed-use place types. The districts associated with urban mixed-use low and urban mixed-use high focus more strongly on walkability. The limited urban mixed-use district is more auto-oriented and less focused on building form. There is another mixed-use district called transitional mixed-use, but it is organized in the code with the special use districts. There are tools called Build to Zone and Build to Width, and they pull buildings closer to the street in order to create a more walkable area. Build to zones work like a setback, except it has a minimum and maximum distance from the street. There has been a lot of public feedback on this standard, which has led to numerous amendments. Overall, these amendments ensure the tool is flexible and simple while still meeting the goal of creating a more walkable city. I want to emphasize that tools targeted at walkability create choice in how a person gets to their destination. It doesn't dictate how someone chooses to get there, but it's about opening up other options. Instead of a build-to zone, the limited urban mixed-use district has setbacks. Similar to all districts, there are height maximums. Upper story setbacks are a tool used to reduce the height of buildings at the street frontage, mitigating canyon effects. Similar to the residential districts, there are building width maximums that regulate the scale of structures based on the place type characteristics. Last, mixed-use districts have a ground floor transparency requirement. This is a percentage of the ground floor facade that is required to have windows. Based on comment, the percentages were reduced for the adoption draft and are quite a bit lower than the current requirement. This reduction meets the intent of the standard while ensuring there's enough flexibility for different uses to meet the requirement. Transparency requirements ensure safe street frontages by creating visibility between the inside of structures and the street. Additionally, a street-facing entrance is required in mixed-use districts. The front door is what really defines the building orientation, and orienting buildings toward the street creates a more walkable city, which is a goal of the land use plan. Special use districts. This article of the zoning is sort of a catch-all for the unique districts in the code. It contains the transitional mixed-use district, industrial districts, open space districts, and civic districts. Special use districts are shaped by permitted building types, maximum dwelling units per building, setbacks, and maximum height. Of these districts, residential uses are allowed in transitional mixed use, open and resource lands, and civic 2. The districts that allow residential have density maximums. The OP2 district is intended for conservation, which is why there is a need to limit density. Transitional mixed use has a density maximum due to constrained and disconnected streets. The open space and civic districts have setbacks, and the maximum height in the open space districts is 35 feet. A 50-foot maximum is allowed in transitional mixed use, and a 60-foot height maximum is allowed in industrial districts. The new zoning code eliminates all neighborhood character overlays, special districts, planned unit developments, and other zoning overlays except for the 5 overlays listed on the screen. In Article 4.5, there is the airport hazard overlay. This overlay reduces density and restricts uses near the airport's main runway and future planned second runway. The remaining 4 overlays are historic resource overlays. They are Fort Missoula, Roosevelt Block, Marshall House, and Sacagawea Historic Resource Overlay. These are all overlays in the current code, though they have been modified slightly for clarity and alignment with the new zoning code. Fort Missoula has been revised to allow for more adaptive reuse of existing structures by opening up more commercial uses. Article 4.7 defines the different classifications of building types and includes some standards for certain buildings. For example, row houses and apartment buildings have a low transparency requirement and street-facing entry requirement. The building types are simplified from the current code and utilize more common language and take note of the missing middle options as well between regular houses and multi-dwelling. The new zoning code allows for some small-scale commercial uses throughout residential neighborhoods. Neighborhood commercial is the building type used for the new commercial structures in residential districts. There was a lot of support for this corner store concept during the land use plan engagement process. Right now, in the code or new code, new buildings are limited to corner lots. Commercial uses are still allowed on all lots, but only building conversions are allowed on mid-block lots in order to maintain the residential character of residential districts. The size of neighborhood commercial buildings is regulated since these are intended to be small-scale neighborhood businesses. The uses article is made up of 2 parts. There is a use table, and then there are use classification definitions. Some of the use class definitions include specific requirements and standards related to the use. The use table details which uses are permitted or prohibited in all of the zoning districts. Use class definitions were revised across the board for clarity, and many definitions remain the same. There was a lot of cleanup and modernization related to the regulations of specific uses, like short-term rentals and wireless communication facilities. The use table is also where someone will find vehicle parking requirements by use, as well as bike storage requirements by use. Parking requirements for residential are eliminated in response to state law. The state law does not allow the city to require parking for residential units under 1,200 square feet in size. However, parking is still allowed for residential, meaning we're not regulating it, but it is still going to be permitted. And even without government regulation, developers are likely to still construct parking in order to market their units. Commercial parking requirements are reduced to promote flexibility for local businesses. This also helps businesses move into existing commercial buildings, which are sometimes so old they were constructed without parking. Bike storage ensures that this mode of transportation is actually feasible. If there is nowhere at home or at a destination to store bikes, it's not possible to own and take a bike. This goes back to the walkability goals of making sure people have different options for how to get around. The site development standards article includes requirements for vehicle parking placement, drive-throughs, bicycle storage design, and landscaping. Parking placement has been updated to ensure driveways are sized to promote permeable areas and to clarify parking is allowed to the sides of structures with restrictions along the street frontage in some zoning districts. Bicycle storage design requirements were updated to create a clear applicability statement and to clarify which types of bike racks meet design requirements. Landscaping requirements are in this article. Overall, there is a reduction in the required area of landscaping compared to the current code in residential districts. The UDC includes new incentives that allow the required area to be reduced even more if a developer plants pollinator gardens, native prairie areas, or installs green roofs. Landscaping promotes the environmental goals in the land use plan by providing trees for shade and air quality. It provides permeable areas so that the city can clean stormwater before it enters our drinking water and allows for snow storage. Let's see. Today, Title 20 zoning code has hillside standards. These standards further restrict development and density on slopes. This piece of code has often been a point of confusion and has been removed. Instead, the proper densities were applied to areas with slopes during the land use process. Currently, the only division in this article is riparian resource protection. This division is flagged for a future amendment project. Revising the buffer protection widths in this section requires a lot of data collection and collaboration with other agencies, such as the Conservation District, DNRC, and Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. Staff are excited to pick this up in the near-term future phase when it can be given dedicated attention. Article 4.12 explains requirements and optional processes for siting multiple buildings on a parcel. This article codified an optional process for phasing the construction of projects with multiple buildings. This article includes a requirement for the planning administrator to evaluate projects with multiple buildings placed on larger parcels to determine when subdivision is required. The requirement to subdivide is based on the need to create blocks and street connectivity that implements the place types of the land use plan. Moving on to nonconformities. Overall, the new code is much more flexible in terms of legal nonconformities than the current code. Legal nonconformities are aspects of an existing development that were legally permitted but no longer comply with the code because the code changed. Staff recommend changing the term nonconforming to legal existing based on public comment. Nonconforming lots that were legally platted but don't meet the current lot width or size standard. The UDC acknowledges that these lots exist but does not create any additional restrictions on nonconforming lots. They can be used and sold and developed with any use or structure allowed by zoning. Structures that are non-conforming to setbacks have more ability to be expanded compared to the old code, and non-conforming structures can be replaced with the same non-conformities. Zoning procedures is in Article 4.15. This piece of code was substantially amended in order to align with new state law. State law provides new criteria for rezonings, which will still go through Planning Commission and City Council for approval. State law changed the process for variances. There will no longer be a board of adjustment. Variances will now be decided administratively by staff. The code includes the process for annexation, which the current code does not have. Annexations still need to comply with the annexation policy, but now the code describes how the process works. Staff reviewed state law again and recommend an amendment to bring the annexation process into closer alignment with the new state law. Several processes that are in Title 20 today do not exist in the new UDC. Reducing the number of processes in code achieves several goals. All of these processes came with a level of uncertainty for the landowner or applicant. The code is now written to be more clear and objective in the standards. The second benefit is efficiency. The fewer special processes in code, the faster staff can review projects, permit them, and get them out the door. It also allows staff to master fewer processes, which means less time spent training and more time spent completing projects. Chapter 5 contains the subdivision regulations. Subdivision is heavily regulated by state law, and the new state law changed how subdivisions are processed. Now, subdivision preliminary plats will be reviewed and approved or denied by staff instead of city council. Public noticing will still be required. Staff will have to respond to noticing, and when a comment suggests that there are impacts caused by the subdivision that were not analyzed by the land use plan, staff or the applicant have to do more research and issue additional memos and go through another round of noticing. So there will still be a lot of public involvement. Overall, the subdivision regulations were amended to be more user-friendly and easier to read as much as possible. Standards were reorganized between the code and the manual. This information used to be somewhat duplicated in the regulations, which caused information to get out of date over time. And so all design standards have been moved into the manual, which reduced the length of the subdivision regulations by about half and increased clarity. Chapter 6 is infrastructure improvements, and it covers everything infrastructure, including street facilities, utilities, parking lots, driveways, and stormwater requirements. This chapter works in tandem with the manual. The manual is a separate document that shows how infrastructure is built. It has design standards and the requirement for new street typologies. And the street typologies provide more flexibility than the old street types and prioritize multimodal transportation where appropriate based on land use. The new regulations reduce the burden of infrastructure cost on missing middle housing. For residential, street improvements are required for parcels with 7 or more dwelling units. And staff believe projects below this density are less likely to be able to afford the cost, which makes housing less feasible or more expensive. Replacement and repair of hazardous sidewalk is still required. Street trees are prioritized, but the new code ensures the requirement to install street trees is proportionate to the project impacts. Overall, infrastructure code has been revised to be more user-friendly and has been substantially simplified. All right, now that we've covered the code, we'll dive into the map. I recommend everyone read through the memo on zoning district mapping in the packet online. This document describes the mapping methodology in detail, so I won't be running through too much of it today. The updating zoning map covers all properties within city limits using the new zoning districts. The updated zoning map aligns with the place types, which is part of the adopted land use plan. Housing capacity from the updated zoning map will be able to accommodate the projected population growth for the urban area through 2045. Residential opportunities are distributed through mapping of new residential and mixed-use zoning districts so that upzoning is not concentrated in vulnerable neighborhoods. As a reminder, here is what staff are recommending as comparable zoning districts to the place types adopted by City Council. Next slide. These are shown in 3 distinct categories: residential, mixed use, and special use. Residential zoning district mapping utilizes existing and planned neighborhood amenities and services, as well as environmental constraints to determine intensity of the zoning districts. Mixed-use district mapping utilizes amenities in the old design excellence overlays to determine the intensity of those districts. And all of the place types have an automatic zoning district that applies to all parcels. If the place type has multiple comparable zoning districts and it meets proximity to services or design excellence overlay criteria, it will be adjusted to a higher intensity zoning district. And if constraints are present, then it will be adjusted to a lower intensity if applicable. There are currently 17 staff recommended amendments to the zoning map. 16 of these 17 amendments are in response to Planning Commission's recommendation to smooth zoning districts. Areas included in this smoothing are in Franklin to the Fort, West Side, University District, Lower Rattlesnake, and Rose Park neighborhoods. These new recommended amendments are in response to what are being called the zigzags, blocks that are split between 2 different zoning districts, and blocks that are surrounded by lower intensity zoning. There is also an area that has been annexed by City Council since Planning Commission hearings. This is a new subdivision to the east of the airport called Paisley Place, which is recommended to be zoned as Urban Mixed Use 1. I'll note that this week, staff are taking another look at some parkland throughout the city. There may be some additional staff recommended amendments coming out on Friday related to zoning parks consistently and the map. And last, we have some upcoming meetings. There will be 2 land use and planning committee sessions to work through amendments and answer questions and have discussion. These are on the 14th and 21st. The 26th of this month is planned for final city council consideration and a vote on these items. Thank you.
All right. Does that conclude our staff report this evening? Okay. Well, thank you very much. So we did just hear the staff report for item 6.1 and 6.2. It's amendments to the land use plan and then the unified development code and zoning map. So I will bring it back to council, seeing if any council members have any questions of staff this evening. Any questions of staff yet? I know that there's been quite a bit of engagement so far. Okay. All right. So with that, then, we, as I mentioned at the beginning here, we are not taking a vote this evening, but we will open up the public hearing and get the motions on the floor to do that. And so, Councillor Nugent, I will hand it over to you as Chair of the Land Use and Planning Committee to get the motions on the floor, and we'll hear public comment after.
Thank you, Mayor Davis. I move City Council adopt a resolution to adopt amendments to the Missoula 2045 Land Use Plan and Place Types Map based on the information and considerations in the staff report. I further move City Council adopt an ordinance establishing Title 22 City of Missoula Unified Development Code UDC Attachment A, repealing it in its entirety, Title 16 Manufactured Housing and Mobile Home Parks, Title 17 Subdivisions, Title 20 Missoula City Zoning Ordinance, Title 21 Form-Based Code Switup-Kane, and any planned use development, PUD, or Special District SD found on Attachment C. Planned use development, PUD, and Special District SD repealed, retained, as well as any PUD or SD not listed as converted to historic resource overlay, with all the foregoing based on the findings of fact and conclusions of law outlined in the staff report. And I further move City Council adopt an ordinance establishing a new City of Missoula zoning map, Attachment B, and repeal the existing zoning map to come into compliance with the Montana Land Use and Planning Act, MCA 76-25, based on the findings of fact and conclusions of law in the staff report.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much. This opens up the public hearing for, again, for our land use plan amendments as well as the Unified Development Code and zoning map. I am anticipating a number of people want to make public comment this evening. If you are wanting to make public comment, will you raise your hand just so I have a sense of how many folks want to comment? Okay, excellent. So I'm going to ask this. We allow for 3 minutes for every buddy that wants to comment on these agenda items. You are certainly allowed all the way up your full 3 minutes. I will hold you to that 3 minutes just so we can make sure everybody has a fair amount of time. There is a timekeeper up here, so you'll see the little time tracking buttons, and then you'll hear a beep when your time is over. You do not need to use all 3 minutes, however. If you have succinctly given your comments, it's okay to sit down early. I will also ask you to queue up, so there's not a lot of time in between. A lot of folks are going to want to make sure that they get in and out. I know that there's it could be a long night this evening, but really appreciate your cooperation there for a smooth public hearing process. Thank you. Sir, I see that you have a small child on your lap and your hand is raised. Would you like to come up first? Come on up. Be happy to have you first. Come on up. And make sure you say your name for the record when it's time. Come on up. You can adjust. I'll let folks know that you can adjust that microphone to wherever you're standing. If anybody comes up that is not able to stand at the podium, we'll make sure we remove that and bring the microphone down to you. So, all right. And I know it's kind of tight in here, so I appreciate everybody's willingness to work with each other. Thanks so much. All right. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi there. Thank you, Mayor. My name is Henry Reich. I'm here with my child, Marit. We are here to be in support of the new plan and the new zoning. We think it's really imperative that Missoula has more capacity for housing and density. And my wife made this. She's not able to be here, but she made this chart to remind us that we can only have 3 of these things between low density, low taxes, and great services. And I'm in favor of low taxes. Well, actually, I'm in favor of great services and high density, and probably taxes are required to make all those things. But just as a reminder, you can't have all 3 of these things. I also want to say that we need high density to maintain all of our beautiful natural space around us. If we continue to allow low density sprawl, it's just going to make it harder and harder to access nature around us. The other thing that I'm actually a little bit disappointed in this process, even though I'm in support of it being approved, is I wish it went further. I wish it said more about what we want Missoula to look like in the future, as opposed to kind of just describing what it looks like today. I really wish that the plan laid out a vision for the future, rather than just saying, here's kind of what the neighborhoods look like now, let's bump everything up by 10 or 15% or whatever, right? It doesn't really have much of a vision for what we might look like in 10 or 20 or 30 years. So I hope that next time this process happens, that we can have a lot more vision involved in it, and set a standard for what Missoula really could be as a great city. The other thing I wish there was in here was a little bit more about replacement of street trees. I don't think there is. Maybe the city staffers can comment on that at some point. There's a lot about new street trees, but there's tons of street trees that get cut down or die or something happens. And like I at one point walked around this, within 2 blocks of City Hall, there's about 30 or 40 street trees, I think, that have been cut and are just empty. So I hope that at some point we can have more street tree replacement in addition to just requiring it at new developments. I'll be done there, but I'm totally in favor of this, and I wish it went farther. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments this evening. Appreciate the illustration as well. All right, come on up.
My name's Susan Mason, and I'll take less than. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we'll just get into that microphone a little bit. It'll be helpful.
My name's Susan Mason, and I'll take less than 3 minutes. First of all, I really want to thank the city staff and the city council. They've been really great at getting our feedback, taking suggestions, and putting lots of those suggestions into the land use plan. I especially liked eliminating the lot sizes. That can lead to maybe lower prices on some homes and more like workplace affordability homes. We're looking forward to anything we can do to work going forward. I think in phase 2, we'll be able to talk more about incentives for affordability, low income affordability, and visitability. And also, we're looking to have more information about ADUs in that next section, hopefully. That can provide a really great thing for seniors living in their home. It could provide a little rental income so they could stay in their home, or provide a place where they could put a relative or a caregiver so they could stay in their home as opposed to going to the nursing home, which none of us wants that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Susan. Hey there.
Hi, my name is John Ottinger. I'm here speaking tonight on behalf of the Pease Farm Old Boys Soccer Group. All the roughly 300 current and former members of our group support the following position on the Duncan Drive property and its future. We're commenting on the proposed rezoning for the parcel in the West Rattlesnake along Duncan Drive to the north of Mountain View Drive. In your map, it's proposed to be changed to rural residential. We agree with this for the majority of the parcel, but disagree with it for the 13-acre Duncan Drive property, which includes about 10 acres for the Pease Farm and 3 acres for the Duncan Drive playing field. We feel the 13-acre parcel should probably be zoned open space, so we request that you make that designation change before City Council adopts this plan. Our understanding is that Missoula's open space zoning is for preserving natural lands, parks, and conservation areas, allowing uses like parks, trails, community gardens, and potentially limited public facilities while restricting intense development. While we are very much in favor of the Pease Farm remaining a community garden for a long time in the future, our primary interest is in the Duncan Drive playing field, so that's the focus of these comments. Our goal is to ensure the Duncan Drive playing field remains a playing field for the long term. We know there are a lot of parks within the city limits that have been sold or given to the city to be managed by City Parks and Rec, and we fully support that happening with the playing field. We recognize that this has been a complex rezoning project with a number of considerations for each parcel. Following details are intended to help you with this decision as it pertains to the Duncan Drive property. First, the history of this playing field is important. Prior to 2008, this was just a patch of open space with a mixture of native plants and noxious weeds. In 2008, our group and nearby neighbors built this playing field with donated labor, money donated by members and neighbors, with the written support of Missoula County Public Schools, Missoula County, and the City of Missoula Parks and Rec. We built this playing field with two goals in mind. One, to have a playing field in the Rattlesnake for kids and adults, and two, to not have houses built there. Missoula County Public Schools and the city entered into a 10-year lease covering management, maintenance, and other details, and in 2014 signed a 40-year lease, which I'll get into in a moment if I have time. Doesn't look like I'm gonna. Actually, I'm gonna jump right ahead to that. So I'm sure you're all aware of the current 40-year lease on the 13 acres. It is a 40-year lease that expires in 2054, which supersedes the previous 10-year lease. Either party can terminate, but only with 3 years' notice. The lease references an MOU with Garden City Harvest and Missoula County Public Schools. The lease states that Duncan Drive Playing Field serves as a youth and adult sports field for groups and citizens primarily.
Thank you very much. That does wrap up your 3 minutes. You can email City Council. That link is found online, or there's also a way to make public comment on Engage Missoula, our Missoula 2045. Thank you very much. Appreciate your comment. Come on up. Or there's the old-fashioned way. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Amy Hurt, and I'm here on behalf of myself and Common Good Missoula. So thanks to the council, city staff, and the committee for all the work so far on the UDC. Common Good Missoula supports the adoption draft as amended to date and urges council to adopt it. Some things we particularly appreciate are that it made room for second homes on the lot by reducing setbacks and other measures, and this will allow more affordable units and promote aging in place, and also that it eliminates unnecessary barriers on previously non-conforming lots and allows reuse of existing buildings and avoiding tear downs, and thus retaining the neighborhood characters that we all appreciate. We do look forward to continuing to work with you all on further incentives for affordability and visitability in phase 2. There is still time to add. We would love to see additional language about ADUs. And as a personal story, I'm a homeowner who intends to build a classic mother-in-law unit over garage type structure, a typical ADU. I am not a professional developer, and I don't readily see where ADUs have gone in the code as it currently stands. This inhibits my ability to plan without engaging professional assistance, and I want to be a good landlord and offer affordable housing to my neighbors, but I need to do this as cost effectively as possible, and some simple language change and perhaps diagrams would help me reserve my funds for the parts of building that I definitely will have to hire out. So in addition to some simple language change, we would also encourage you all to roll out educational materials as soon as possible, discussing new concepts like how floor area ratio works and the accessory dwelling units, and then any other tools that are new to the community to help us to make plans in the preliminary stages without engaging professionals. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hurt. Really appreciate your comments. I will mention this for folks that are making public comment this evening. It's kind of an odd situation, and Cassie Trepard could explain this better than I, but accessory dwelling units are basically baked into the code. So this was something that we had to make zoning changes for in the past, code reform changes. So you're aware the legislature has changed the state law mandating cities that adopt land use plans like the city of Missoula to require 2 homes in every single family zone. So in our most restrictive place type and single family zones, the state legislature does require that there be 2 homes, thereby more or less eliminating the concept of accessory dwelling unit. So that's why you're not seeing the words in the code. And I just wanted to make sure that you knew that before you left tonight. And also others in the audience may be interested in that. Cassie, can you please correct anything I just stated?
That is all accurate. If it's detached from other units, it's a house. If it's attached to your house, you have a duplex. However, staff are looking at an additional staff recommended amendment just to clarify that under the transitional provisions so that folks have a clear place to look for that answer.
Excellent, thank you. And I will say that it did not take the Montana legislature for the city of Missoula to bring back accessory dwelling units. I was real proud to see the staff and city council at the time welcome accessory dwelling units after they had been eliminated by city council some years ago. So we recognize that being as a very vital aspect of some very gentle growth across our community. Thank you. All right, Jean, thank you. Take it away.
I'm Jean Zosel, Z-O-S-E-L, Executive Director of Garden City Harvest. I want to thank the staff for your tireless work on all of this and the City Council for your commitment to making Missoula a place where we can all live and thrive. Affordable housing obviously is essential to a successful community, and so is access to affordable, healthy food, which is my thing. In the 2024 PROST report, 70% of people surveyed said they strongly support protecting working lands such as farms and other agricultural areas. I'm concerned about the long-term security of our community's food supply. Quality, locally grown food does not happen by accident. It requires intention, planning, land, and protection. And Garden City Harvest is a homegrown nonprofit dedicated to food security in Missoula. For 30 years, we've operated neighborhood farms, community gardens, and school gardens at 22 sites across Missoula. We're deeply woven into the health and fabric of our community. Our largest site is the 10-acre Peas Farm, located on Missoula County Public School property in the Rattlesnake. The property is part of the 40-year lease that was mentioned earlier to the city, and we sublease our 10-acre parcel from the city of Missoula. Each year, the farm grows over 55,000 pounds of food, much of which is distributed through partners like the Missoula Food Bank, the Food Pantry, All Nations Health Center, groups that serve Missoula's most marginalized residents. We also operate mobile farm stands that allow seniors of low income to buy fresh produce from the change in their pockets right outside their front doors. And the Peas Farm is a cherished urban green space and educational resource. Roughly 2,500 school children visit each year on educational field trips, and these are children from all of Missoula's neighborhoods. And University of Montana students learn there also about sustainable agriculture through their hands-on experiences. So there's a lot that goes on there. The farm is a highly productive agricultural land that has been farmed by us, by Garden City Harvest, for 24 years. It was a dairy prior to that, and is a critical part of Missoula's food safety net, especially for our neighbors who struggle to put healthy food on their tables. Peas Farm is a true community amenity, and its zoning should reflect its value and function. I hope you consider all of this through your approval process. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ozel. Thanks for coming down tonight. All right, next public comment, come on up.
Hi, my name's Adam Cook. I've been up here before to speak in favor of this code reform. And however, I'm affiliated with Pro Housing Missoula, but for my day job, I also work in the climate and environmental science field. And I just wanted to say a few words about what I see as the benefits of this toward protecting the environment locally and on a broader scale, and how I think that affects how we should proceed with amending the new UDC. There is an extensive amount of research at this point to show the environmental benefits of increasing infill housing supply. Zach Subin of Berkeley's Turner Center had a recent analysis showing that as one goes from San Francisco to its less dense suburbs, per capita transport greenhouse gas emissions triple. And that's a concept that holds true from city to city as well. But density isn't just a static target that we want to achieve. It's not a single number that we want to hit. What we are really concerned about and what we want to achieve through this process is density of opportunity. When there is adequate housing supply, people have the opportunity to live close to friends, family, employment, recreation, amenities, and as a result, they don't need to travel as much. And when there isn't adequate housing supply, they need to travel a lot more. In fact, a paper from 2024, also focusing on the Bay Area as a model case, by a researcher from UC Santa Cruz showed that as housing costs in the Bay Area exploded as a result of their total failure to add sufficient housing supply, that drove not only a huge increase in super commuting, that is commutes over 90 minutes one way, but it also precipitously increased development in the wildland urban interface, that is the areas with the highest fire risk, and that's been since backed up by other research. So how do we make this code reform more effective? I would say let's focus, let's be pragmatic, let's be clear with our final draft, and let's incorporate amendments that have objective effects rather than focusing on the symbolic and subjective. To that end, I encourage you to reduce or eliminate commercial parking requirements in mixed-use zones. I encourage you to reduce or eliminate landscaping requirements, reduce or eliminate activity areas, and increase height limits in the urban residential 3 and 4 zones. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Appreciate your comments. Come on up.
Hello, Brittany Palmer. I'm a Ward 2 resident and the Executive Director of Front Step Community Land Trust, formerly North Missoula Community Development Corporation. We've been a part of the affordable housing and community development ecosystems since the 90s. And we also organize Pro Housing Missoula, a community of advocates who are obviously passionate about housing and quality of life. This updated development code might be the biggest step we've made together toward a more affordable and equitable Missoula, so we're really excited about that. And we believe this is not just an opportunity to stabilize rents and provide more homes across town for all of us, but also we will all benefit from having new neighbors, more neighbors, and the good that comes from welcoming others who want to be a part of this community with us. So at Front Step, we're based in the commercial building. It's our commercial building on Burn Street, the well-loved Burn Street Center. We've been looking at ways to offer more warehouse space for one of our commercial tenants, the Western Montana Growers Co-op, and how to build more housing on site. And one of the architect proposals I've looked at shows that in the current zoning, we could add up to 24 community land trust homes on the site. However, the proposed rules for landscaping and activity area, transparency, and parking location, as written in the proposed code, would add hundreds of thousands of dollars of cost and cut the new land trust housing that we're able to build on this particular parcel from 24 units to just 6 units. And so while we think the UDC the draft is a strong step in the right direction, and we're very excited about the direction it's in, I think that if we truly share goals of expanding neighborhood commercial and expanding the amount of residential homes we can build on each parcel, and the goal of promoting compact development within the urban core so that we're preventing sprawl out into the hills, I think this, especially these things, need another look. And that's why I encourage you to pass amendments, particularly those that reduce landscaping and activity area requirements. The Pro Housing Missoula amendments you got today in your packet, and that are in the public record would further improve and strengthen this updated UDC. And I believe we should prioritize, separate from zoning, how to create and pay for really high quality green spaces in every neighborhood if that remains a community want and need, but do it separate from the zoning. And also just want to thank city staff for their hard work on this. We're hopeful, I'm hopeful for the Missoula that could result from this work. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Brittany. Thanks for coming down. All right, next public comment. Come on up.
Hi. Good evening. I'm Kathleen Pooty McLaughlin, representing Five Valleys Audubon. The chapter's interest in the UDC centers on how riparian area protection is addressed. Riparian areas are situated on the banks of rivers or streams and are also adjacent to wetlands. In our dry climate, they are critical wildlife habitats. In droughts, they act as sponges to retain valuable water. Occupying less than 4% of Montana's land area, riparian areas are used by more than 80% of the state's bird species. Protections and requirements for riparian areas are in the UDC's chapters 4 and 5, zoning and subdivision. We are concerned that the riparian buffers or setbacks, as outlined in these chapters, are insufficient to adequately protect riparian resources. Riparian area setbacks are a biological issue and should be grounded in science. To determine the presence or absence of a riparian resource, consultation with a qualified professional must be mandatory. Current language in Chapter 4 is permissive and states that such consultation, quote, is recommended or may be required. To this end, the county consulted with Fish, Wildlife, and Parks in developing the riparian setbacks, which now are incorporated into its recently updated zoning code. We think that UDC's riparian area setback requirements would also benefit from a consultation with Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. It was hard to hear a staff person say that this section would be open to amendments and that they do plan to consult professional agencies in the future. We do hope that this provides a scientific methodology for consistent and enforceable standards for riparian protection. For nearly 2 decades, our organization has reviewed and commented on applications for subdivision development throughout the county. Recently, we've seen the county regulations work effectively in the planning for a development that would affect Grant Creek. Under the proposed UDC requirements, setback widths may be insufficient to assure adequate riparian protection. Also, timing is important to identify riparian habitat. The presence of a riparian resource and the need for a protective setback must be made before the preparation of a preliminary plat. Measures to mitigate riparian area impacts should be incorporated into a project's design at the outset of the planning process. This benefits the developer, the public, and the resource itself. Finally, the city needs to consider the value of green belts.
Thank you, Kathleen. Appreciate your comments this evening. Come on up.
My name is Andrew Hirsch. I'm a resident of East Missoula. All the council members have received an email from me with my comments as to planning commissions, the consolidated planning board's recommended amendment to the UDC and zoning map, one of which I'm very much in favor of, what staff is recommending against. That's not what I'm speaking to tonight. What I'm speaking to tonight is specific to the process of public engagement. I think planning and our Missoula folks were surprised when East Missoula suddenly became aware in October of last year about the future land use plan process, because we had, quote, inadvertently received a mailer speaking about the open house that was going to be held at the library in November. One of our residents, our citizens, our East Missoula residents, contacted our commissioner, and they were like, not sure. Commissioner contacted the Engaged Missoula folks, and then what we found, like within a day, was this specific notice that was posted on the Our Missoula site. On their main page, it said, important clarification about the zoning mailer. If you received a mailer titled important information about the zoning of your property, but do not live within Missoula city limits, please ignore it. Please note, if your property is outside city limits in the county, which East Missoula is because we're not yet annexed, you can disregard the notice. The proposed zoning changes will not affect you or your property. And that goes and talks about the mailer having been sent on October 1st. And I think I've understood what the gap was. So there are the exhibits, there are tables in the future land use plan document specific to the proposed place types. And then there's one map in particular that shows out of jurisdiction. And that's almost all of East Missoula, with the exception of the Esquire property, which I won't speak to because you've already seen my notes on that. But my sense is that the East Missoula residents have not been included in this process up to now, which is very disturbing up until we got that notice and jumped in and say, hey, what's going on here? So what's the remedy to that? I'm hoping that City Council will take seriously the comments that they're getting from East Missoula residents in support of the Consolidated Planning Board's proposed amendments specific to East Missoula. If you lived in the Aspire parcel, which was part of the city, you could have had, you would have received the mailer, but of course nobody's there because it's not developed yet. So technically nobody should have received the mailer, and I'm so glad that we did, because here we are tonight, letting you know that we're very concerned, and that's all I've got.
Thank you for your comments, Andrew. Next public comment, come on up.
Hi there, my name is Torrin Etter. I live in Ward 1. As a lifelong Montanan and 14-year resident and property owner in the Lower Rattlesnake, I want to voice my strong support for the increased densities in the proposed zoning code in our neighborhood and across the city. My family and I love living in this neighborhood. We're fortunate enough to have bought a house here or there more than 10 years ago. Although it was a stretch for our family to afford at the time, it would now be nearly impossible for us to afford a house there given today's home prices. In addition to being a citizen of the Lower Rattlesnake, I'm an architect and builder focusing on small-scale urban infill projects. I've always felt that when possible, it's more appropriate to add housing within our city versus constantly expanding the footprint of our city, eating up more farmland, wildlife habitat, and requiring more car commuting. With an increase in zoning density, the character of our neighborhood will change over time, but it's a change that I think that we must embrace for the good of our community and the good of our planet. Other neighborhoods across Missoula, like the north side, west side, central Missoula, have long had higher zoning densities and an associated increase in dense housing. Like the Lower Rattlesnake, these other neighborhoods also have unique histories and strong neighborhood characters. Our neighborhood will continue to be the gateway to the Rattlesnake. We will continue to have prime access to Mount Jumbo, Reno Park, and many amazing trails. I would like more people that come to Missoula to have the opportunity to live in great neighborhoods like ours and not be forced into far-flung subdivisions. I hope that more people get to share the experience I have when I ride my bike through Reno Park to go to work, pick up a burger from downtown, or get a new novel from the library. Lastly, I encourage you to adopt the proposed amendments as put forth by Pro Housing Missoula. And I would just like to thank everybody at the city, CPDI, council members, and the leadership of Mayor Davis. Thanks for your time.
Thank you for your comments this evening, Torrin. All right, next comment, come on up.
Hi, my name is Shibu Ahrens, A-R-E-N-S, and I'm here with Front Step Community Land Trust, which is Montana's largest community land trust and an affordable housing provider. We also organize Pro Housing Missoula, a group of local volunteers working to expand housing options in our city. Over the past year of public meetings, I've often heard the question, what does affordable housing actually mean? I think most people in Missoula already know the answer because they feel it. For renters, for young families, for people trying to buy their first home, housing here is simply not affordable. A household is considered cost burdened when it spends more than 30% of its income on housing. In Missoula, about 30% of renters are severely cost burdened. Nationally, this last year, only about 1 in 5 home buyers were first-time buyers, and the average first-time buyer is now about 40 years old. That tells us something is deeply out of balance. When people hear affordable housing, they often think of subsidies, tax dollars, or philanthropy, and those tools are important. But what affordability should really mean is something simpler, that a household earning the median income can afford a typical home in the city. Right now in Missoula, you need roughly twice the median income to buy the median home. That gap is at the root of the crisis. Because of that gap, even our limited subsidy dollars are increasingly going to households earning 100% or 120% of the median income, people who in a healthy market wouldn't need assistance at all. When the private market fails to produce enough modest middle-income housing, it forces our public dollars to stretch thinner and thinner. The way we fix that is this process, by allowing more homes of different sizes, types, and price points to be built, especially in walkable, transit-served parts of the city. Flexibility in building size, height, and mixed-use design is not a giveaway to developers. It's how we create more homes that real Missoulians can afford. The amendments proposed by Pro Housing Missoula move an already strong draft code further in that direction. They make it easier to build neighborhood shops with homes above, small apartment buildings, and compact infill housing where people already live and want to live. If Missoula takes bold steps with this code, we can start closing the gap between what people earn and what homes cost. That's how we make affordability real, not just for the few, but for the whole community. Thank you for your time. Thank you to the staff, and thank you to council for all the hard work you've done on this.
Thank you for your comments tonight, Shibu. All right.
Hi, my name is Gianna Richter. I'm speaking today in a personal capacity as a renter. I want to thank staff again for the hard work and great step toward equity this draft UDC provides. That being said, I want to take some time today to make a few more grounding statements around equity that are worth voicing while considering how bold the city should push forward on the UDC and who should have the biggest say. First, during this process, I think it's important to name that owning property in Missoula does not and should not entitle anyone to an unchanged neighborhood around them, nor to an outsized influence on the growth and development of their neighborhoods, especially considering the exploitation and class segregation Missoula has experienced that has contributed to who currently is able to buy and own property today. Also, as we saw, the density has changed quite a bit just within the last century. And along with this, and relatedly, I think a lot of us in this room have been raised on the narrative that the American dream, that if we work hard enough, we can one day hope to attain the house with the yard and picket fence, a dream we all know has never been meant for everyone to acquire, and it's quite obviously impossible for most neighbors in this market and for climate goals anyway. But I think the most insidious part of this dream is that it's led many people in this community and beyond to believe they deserve their own yard and peace and should protect it at all costs. A sentiment born out of stark individualism in which I've been hearing a lot underlying advocacy for a more restrictive code. And yes, we should care about climate impact and open space. Yes, we should incentivize green building and rooftop gardens. But as several studies show, creating more dense, compact, and walkable neighborhoods is proven to prevent sprawl, cut emissions, mitigate climate change, especially for those most impacted by the climate crisis. And when we include mandates that make it too costly or impossible to build affordable housing and attainable mixed-use development in order to continue on the neighborhood character or protect a solar panel, we can see how this also insidiously serves to continue segregating wealth and opportunity and give current property owners outsized influence over the future of our neighborhoods versus the interests of the collective. I know there are a lot of trade-offs to consider this month, but I would encourage members of the council to pass Housing Missoula's amendments and also not vote from a place of fear or worst-case scenarios. Instead, let's unlock opportunity to build vibrant, affordable neighborhoods and create housing solutions that push back against sentiments that seek to freeze Missoula in time. Let's build the future of our city with our collective well-being in mind and our next generation of neighbors in mind together. Thank you all again for the hard work that you're doing. I look forward to being in further conversation with you all and celebrating later this month. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments tonight, Jana.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. My name is Danny Tenenbaum. I am an alternate on the planning board, the Consolidated Planning Board, but tonight I'm just speaking in a personal capacity, just on my own. So budget season is not too far away, and I'd ask you, as elected officials who craft and pass the budget, to consider what would you like to see better funded in the coming years. Maybe it's public safety, maybe it's bike lanes, sidewalks, urban trees, better snow plowing, street repairs. These things have a couple things in common. They're important, one, and two, they cost money. And the primary way that the city and you as council members can raise revenue without actually raising the property tax millage rate is through development. It's through new housing, new businesses. And the most fiscally responsible way to enable that new development is on existing infrastructure, and to focus that development where infrastructure like streets, water, sewers, transit already exists or it's nearby. This is the core principle of urban economics. So in the coming days, you'll have several decision points that will have a profound impact on the ability to start new businesses and build new homes in Missoula. This will have a profound impact on the city's ability to meet the land use plan's target of doubling the rate at which we permit new homes every year. The choices that you make on each amendment will directly affect your ability in future budget cycles to fund public safety, street maintenance, bike lanes, and sidewalks, and such. You've no doubt will hear from others tonight, you already have, about the importance of infill development for reducing carbon emissions, for reducing inequality. I agree with them 100%. I just also want to add that amending the UDC to allow for more infill development and then passing that UDC is also the most fiscally responsible decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny. Thanks for your comments.
I'm Carol. My name is Carol Elson, and I've lived in the lower Rattlesnake at 834 Van Buren for almost 40 years. And I do want to say that, even if it dents my minutes, thank you for your hard work. I look at your faces. You look tired, and you should be. You've worked very hard on this. And even though I'm going to speak against these zoning things, I want to say to you, like I say to every soldier I see, even if I don't agree with America's military policy at the moment, I appreciate your service. Thank you for keeping the city running. Okay, that aside, in 1996, the city council voted to divide the city into neighborhoods, and thus the neighborhood councils were created. My son John in high school was asked to be on the first leadership team. When he went off to college, I took his place, serving for many years on the leadership team and the community forum. So I'm kind of familiar with this room and so forth. But during this time, I came to appreciate the richness of our neighborhood. The lower Rattlesnake is a jewel of beauty. It's a tiny neighborhood squeezed between a mountain and a creek. The charm of the neighborhood is preserved today with historic preservation houses, railroad workers, graveyards, and diverse housing. In my years on the team, we accomplished much by improving the community and identity of the neighborhood. We redeemed the area of Sergeant Don Gregory Park, moving the chain link fence, planting shrubs, trees, and adding benches. With neighborhood grants from the city, we negotiated with the state to install a brick median with a large planting space and a train image on a sign to identify our origins, which was a diverse assortment of train engineers and workers, that's still our diversity today. The homes there, the lower Rattlesnake. We in the upper Rattlesnake tirelessly worked on a transportation plan, which we submitted to the city after years of committee work, and were rewarded with real sidewalks, replacing dirt paths along much of Van Buren. With another neighborhood grant, we designed and installed the gateway to the Rattlesnake sign and planned and maintained the boulevards, all with the aim to make the neighborhood a home and a distinct community with neighbors working together. My husband was drafted as a Little League team coach, and we got to know so many families in Ward 1 and watch those kids grow up and become outstanding citizens in Missoula J. Now the city offers us a plan which whimsically says you are not a neighborhood. You will be an extension of downtown with apartment buildings and infill and putting people in zero lot line structures. Gone will be the gardens, the Little League teams, and more single folks, transient students, young professionals seeking living spaces. Now, I love people, so in a way I'm thinking if this zoning goes through, I'm going to be happy. I'm going to have an apartment building in my face when I look out of Jumbo, and I can go be friends with those people. So, anyway, but for you in the city council, vision is
Carol, thank you so much.
Okay,
that is your 3 minutes. I really appreciate it.
I will send the rest of it in.
Great. Thank you very much, and thanks for your service with your neighborhood council. Really appreciate that. Hello.
Hi there. My name is Jessica Tuberty. Madam Mayor, councilors, thank you for listening. It's nice to live in a place like this. Staff, you've worked so hard, so many meetings, so many revisions. I respect the process. I'm really here to speak for the trees. I've been volunteering with Trees for Missoula since it was created. It worries me that you don't think we need trees when there are less than 7 dwelling units. So my block the whole block has less houses than that. No trees. It worries me, right? It's not a good climate solution. We know trees make us happy. We know trees make us cooler. We know trees slow traffic, and so there are less accidents. There's really not a lot you can say bad about trees. And I respect your desire to increase housing. We must do it. It is the challenge of our time and our community. I do not think you have to also give up the landscaping and the trees that make it feel wonderful, that provide us with that feeling of living in a place. All you have to do is visit a town without trees. And it is so sad. It is a sad, sad place. So if you want people to come and you want people to stay, you cannot just build structure. You must also think of all of the goodness that surrounds a structure and what it gives to us. And that is a one-time decision, but trees live a long time. And so not only are you making a decision for right now, for these families, for those kids, but you're making a decision for 100 years of people. And you can't change it, right? This is a one shot. So be careful throwing the trees away and saying just because you have, three duplexes or you have a certain setup that you don't need the trees. You still need the trees. Please, please, please keep the trees in the plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments tonight. Come on up.
Greetings, counselors. I'm Larry Chase, and I'm speaking about the Easy Street area, also known as Ben Hughes neighborhood. And we request that you amend the proposed zoning for the entire neighborhood to LUR1. Prior to our meeting with her last Friday, Ms. Pehan provided the zoning district mapping memo. It's attachment 5 on your agenda for tonight, helping us to continue learning about the process. She helped us better understand staff's methodology in using amenities to identify zoning. Basically, you must have 3 amenities to upzone from LUR1 to LUR2. Ms. Pehan agreed with our analysis that only 13%, and if you're being generous, 30% of parcels in the neighborhood have those 3 amenities. So how did the neighborhood get an R2 designation? Well, Ms. Pehan provided that answer, and that answer relates to you, City Council. She shared that you gave staff guidance and direction that decisions should fall on the side of being more aggressive to upzone when possible. In the case of the Easy Street neighborhood, this aggressive decision-making by staff resulted in the minority of about a third of parcels driving that L2 designation for all parcels. And while Ms. Pehan shared verbally about that guidance from you to be aggressive, we've not found that guidance in the methodology memo. Instead, we see the following in the memo, and I quote, "As a general rule, if more than half of a block was assigned to a particular zoning district, that district was extended to cover the full block." Well, due to the configuration and unified nature of the neighborhood, the entire neighborhood has only one ingress and egress access point, no cross streets. It functions as a block. So based on the written direction and methodology, the entire neighborhood would be zoned as R1 because far less than 50% of parcels have 3 amenities. Or said the opposite way, 70% plus of parcels have only 1 or 2 amenities and would be zoned R1. That zoning district would then be extended to cover the entire block, fitting the methodology of smoothing out the edges to improve neighborhood compatibility. Ms. Pehan told us that you have direct discretion to make changes as long as those changes align with the land use plan, which you heard about tonight. When you examine the LUP, you'll find that LUR1 zoning for the Easy Street neighborhood does align with the LUP. You received additional information earlier today from an email of one of our neighbors showing references that our request does align with the LUP. And additionally, the documented methodology, as just explained, also aligns with the LUR1 designation. So as such, we ask you to amend the proposed zoning to RUL1.
Thank you, Larry, for your comments. Appreciate it. Hi, come on up.
Hello, I'm Amy Sillenberg, the Executive Director at Climate Smart Missoula. And I want to start by thanking city staff for these years of efforts, council for careful consideration as this moves forward, and community members who are striving to help Missoula thrive for decades to come. So we at Climate Smart Missoula have been involved in this Our Missoula effort since the outset. We participated in myriad community meetings. We heard that housing availability and affordability are a real priority, as are considerations of climate, nature, and livability. So we provided comments earlier regarding our priority considerations, and we're a member of Common Good Missoula and appreciate the collaborative recommendations that they've offered. We're generally supportive of where this has landed before council. We know that change is hard. We know this UDC update is imperfect and that none of us have all the answers. Competing interests are a challenge even when our overarching values align. So in reviewing the planning board staff presentations and updates over the last couple of weeks, and after visiting with city staff and others, I offer just a few comments. First, given the city of Missoula's myriad established climate goals and given the climate impacts that are here today and projected to intensify, I think it is imperative we consider these directly with this UDC. We've had damaging windstorms. We're experiencing weeks of days over 90 degrees, hotter nights. December broke temperature records. Rivers were at risk of flooding in December. Considering all of this, I recently spoke with scientists at the Montana Climate Office, and they confirmed that yes, what we are experiencing now is a window into the future. For example, 10 years ago, atmospheric rivers were not on scientists' minds. They are today. Flooding and rain deluges will hit Missoula, and we will experience more severe heat waves. The risks are real, and no place is immune. I bring up these direct impacts because it's imperative we design our community to deal with these. Or in 20 years, we'll be saying, if only, and we'll be dealing with unaffordable expenses. So a few ways we can get this right in the new UDC: tree planting, tree care, bioswales, green spaces, flexible landscaping are all needed as temperature rise. Rain comes in deluges, and our physical and mental health are challenged. We support these provisions. We need more affordable housing. This is a great climate solution. And we support measures that increase units and density more equitably throughout Missoula. And at the same time, we need permeable green infrastructure to balance all the hard infrastructure of buildings if we're going to manage these increasingly significant precipitation events. Parks are crucial but insufficient. We need green space woven throughout our urban landscape, not just for the quality of life benefits, but because water needs somewhere to go. So for that reason, we support keeping landscape requirements as written and requiring activity areas for developments over 10 units. The compromises and balances that staff have offered does seem to allow for this while also encouraging space for more housing units.
Thank you, Ms. Sillenberg.
Fast. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Gwen Hoppy. I live in the Riverfront area, and thank you very much for all your work, especially the planning group back there. And I watched the planning board and learned a lot from them. I watched the land use committee that was on Wednesday, and I learned a lot. Some of the citizen responses struck me, and I'm going to just go over some of those things. One of them was this is specifically floor area ratio. I've talked to some architects, and they said for a place that I have that with that, we would be building less than we could have before with the other zoning. So I'd be careful with that if there's any way to adjust that and not be too attached to it. And also, I don't know, in this process, it seems like there's some amendments on the table now that you're going to vote on or not, and then there's the whole thing. And I don't know if there's any more room for more amendments to what they put out there, but I guess I'll find out. And another thing that came up was visuals. I think Gwen was on there, and I think a lot of us citizens needed to see more drawings of existing places to see really what it was going to mean to our areas. And I still look forward to that. And another thing I learned is from one gal, she said, turn down the heat, and I agree. I'm all for more density, affordable housing, And that, but in some places, like the UR4, it's in the wrong place. It's too much. Like I have a place on 2nd Street, lovely old neighborhood. We do have, we have a ADU in the back. Our neighbors, we have triplexes, fourplexes. It works. But now it's going to be that, I don't know if it's still going to be 50 feet tall and unlimited dwellings. And so that is overkill. I appreciate density, but that is too much for the feel for our neighborhood. And strangely, my little strip, like 2.5 blocks, just on the other side of the street, I live across from where the Engans lived, best neighborhood. They're all the U3, but we are just a little strip U4s, and so we're going to have this potentially massive development, them not as massive. And somebody talked about the alley thing. Couldn't we divide in alleys? Because I think we have such a high, 3 minutes.
Thanks, Ms. Hoppy. Appreciate your comments this evening.
Okay, thank you very much.
You bet. Thanks for coming down.
Oh, and I support the heat things too, which I didn't get.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Lindsay Nugent, no relation to Mike up there. As a Ward 1 renter and a member of the group, I urge you to pass Pro Housing Missoula's proposed amendments. Neighborhood character does not and should not equal low density inherently. In Missoula, I've lived in single-family homes, apartment buildings, and currently a fourplex. Density means walkability, density means affordability, and density means that I have a chance to know my neighbors better, inviting them for dinner, bringing in packages, borrowing a cup of sugar, easily checking in on each other, and sharing resources after events like that horrible storm 2 summers ago. My fourplex was built in 1920. There's nothing inherently historic or inevitable about low-density housing. A code that prioritizes mixed use and many more multifamily homes will make the city stronger in so many ways. Either we smartly build up and out, or sprawl out, taking over the beautiful open space surrounding us that we all know and love. I know which vision for the city I prefer. Thanks so much to the city staff and council's time today and during this whole process.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Nugent. Come on up.
Hi there, I'm Chris Everett, speaking again for Ben Hughes. Larry made our position known that we're requesting an amendment from LUR2 to LUR1. And Larry spoke briefly about how LUR1 actually aligns with the land use plan. And I wanted to speak just a little bit more and give the citations for the land use plan. If you look at the land use plan for our neighborhood, the vast majority of our neighborhood is shown as minimally suitable, tier 1 minimally suitable for development with less than 2 amenities. We would have never thought in our neighborhood that we would be LUR2 based on the land use plan. That's on page 33 of the land use plan. In addition, the Ben Hughes neighborhood is identified in the land use plan as having a very environmentally constrained environment and with an elevated high burn intensity. So those are just the citations I wanted to give you on the land use plan. So I think that I'm finished with that part.
Thank you for coming down. Appreciate your comments this evening. Thank you. Next, come on up.
Hello, I'm Gail Goodshee. I've been here before, and I have something to add along with what Larry talked about with UR1 and UR2. I see that the map splitting the block lines in several neighborhoods, including mine on the west side and other neighborhoods, has been straightened out, and that will make a lot of sense to folks who are captured in those split blocks. However, it doesn't solve all the problems or answer all the questions, and I have quite a few. And my first question is, why is the west side split between UR3 and UR4 in the first place? Neighbors who live across the line between UR3 and UR4 are affected in the same way and by the same issues. This will not change or improve because they are separated by a side street or a different zoning designation. The formula for determining whether a zone is designated UR4 includes proximity to a bus line and within a 15-minute walk of at least 3 amenities. As Larry mentioned, in his neighborhood, on much of the west side, that is not the case. And we heard a lot about walkability from the staff when they presented, which was great. And that is an issue on the west side as well. Most of the west side does not have contiguous ADA conforming sidewalks, which makes it difficult to walk for anybody but able-bodied people. So whether we're walkable or not, I think it's up for grabs. Also, lack of sidewalks, proximity, et cetera, are an issue, and that's under the amenities thing. Maybe we need a definition of amenities because are amenities considered those things that all of us can use, like shops or grocery stores or restaurants, whatever? Or do they also include anything that's commercial that might be used by a specialty group or only a special group of people, like a dispensary or the Poverello Center? So I think maybe what amenities means needs to be clarified in order for us to understand more about it. And the other question is, why are we encouraging the tallest and densest development in the middle of a couple of established neighborhoods, the west side and university areas? For much of the proposed map, the UR4 is targeted mainly along main arteries. And it's true on the north side as well, where it's along Scott Street. So why is it different on the west side in the university area? So in order to avoid significantly upzoning, which is laid out as a priority on the west side and the university area, I encourage you to limit UR4 in those two areas to the main arterials or near to them. And that conforms with most of the rest of the map.
Thank you for your comments,
Please adopt
Gail.
the FAR amendment from the Land Planning Commission. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments this evening.
Hi, I'm Colin Lane, an architect with MMW Architects. I just want to first say that I'm grateful to see democracy in action here in Missoula in a healthy way. And that's a testament to council and staff and the public, and I'm really grateful for that. I am here because I'm concerned. I work with nonprofits, I work with small businesses, and I help people build housing, market rate housing and affordable housing. And in our mixed use districts, we are looking at more expense, more complex review processes, and most importantly, less housing. There are two reasons for this. One is that we are required in all of the mixed-use areas of town, which is half of the core of Missoula, everything this side of Reserve. We are required to develop a downtown-style building every single time. So it doesn't matter if it's a gas station or a grocery store or an auto-oriented business. And those downtown-style requirements include build-to zones, build-to widths, transparency, requirements on where we can put the front door, and requirements on where we can put the parking. All of those requirements are new to this code and are expensive and disruptive to us wanting to build housing. So I would urge council to limit the downtown style area of development to only those areas of town that we really, really care about. So maybe Brooks, maybe downtown, and the downtown transitional zones. Secondly, landscaping and activity area have been increased from what we currently have in Title 20, which means there's less land to build housing. So I would encourage council to rely on the good work that Planning Board did. A lot of discussion and compromise happened at that board level, and at that level, compromise was adopted that would allow us to both keep trees and keep landscaping and keep our wonderful green spaces and do more housing. So thank you.
Thank you, Colin, for your comments this evening.
Hey, hello. I'm Jane Darnell, and I'm a resident of Ben Hughes neighborhood, Ward 1. And as we're coming to the near end of this planning process, I want to take a minute and let you know it's really been a pleasure to be a part of the process thus far. And I so appreciate the willingness of the staff to spend time with us and our council representatives and planning board members. I've really learned a lot. First and foremost, I support the plan. I really support the direction of the plan and where Missoula is going and how the staff and the council have been responsive to what you've heard. I respect the work you all do, and I trust you take the very best interests we all have to heart. That said, I think there's been a mistake, for lack of a better word, in the zoning of the Ben Hughes neighborhood. When you apply the methodology, you come up with LUR 1, not LUR 2. And so we continue to request an amendment to correct that mistake. And in fact, to leave it as it is, I think is incompatible with the land use plan and the methodology. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments this evening. Come on up.
Hello, my name is Mike Robinson. I'm a private developer in town. I built the Hogan Building, which is on 3rd Street. It's a 36-unit building for seniors. Very proud of the building. In fact, it won a national award, a fairly prestigious national award from the National Group of Architects this spring. I would look to duplicate the building and talked with my architect and was concerned to learn that under the new code, I cannot build that same building. There's several ways in which it would fail new code, some of which are minor, but a couple ones are a little bit more major. We could not build the same size building. We'd have to step it back. That means fewer units, and that means they'd be more expensive units. It's my understanding that the planning board has done some work on landscaping requirements, and so I encourage you, and they've offered an amendment to the codes, and I would encourage you to adopt that amendment as they have written it. That would help us out. And then secondly, I guess more broadly, I'm a little concerned about the codes, and it's something as the architect spoke about a minute ago, that this code seems to apply downstout type development or encourage downtowns type walkable neighborhoods broadly across most commercial zoning neighborhoods in Missoula, aside from Reserve and West Broadway. And that seems to me too limiting or too restrictive to allow broader type of commercial growth in Missoula. So thank you for that.
Thanks for coming down to give comment this evening. Come on up.
Good evening, Chad Bauer, President and CEO of the Missoula Chamber of Commerce. First and foremost, thank you to staff and council and the mayor for all of the hard work that's gone into this over the last 3 years. I've been a part of it for the last year, and I know way more about code than I ever want to again in my entire life. But with that being said, we strongly encourage the passage of this UDC and the zoning. We know it's not a perfect document by any stretch of the imagination. There's a number of amendments out there, and definitely encourage you to look at those amendments and pass those amendments. I've been in, I don't know how many hundreds of meetings where we've worked through a lot of those. I really encourage you to look at the planning board's recommendations for modification of the landscaping and activity areas. And then, as the two previous gentlemen said in front of me, the design excellence standards on the build to zones, the build to width, transparency, so on and so forth. But fully knowing that this is a living, breathing document and it can be amended at any time moving forward, we have to have a starting point, and this is that starting point so we can continue to build Missoula and make Missoula a better place. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Bauer. Thanks for your comments. All right, come on up.
Good evening. I'm Jeff Leroy. I'm a resident of Ward 3, and I'm the Public Affairs Director for the Missoula Organization of Realtors. And so the Missoula Organization of Realtors and our 800 members and affiliates would like to share their support for 3 items. The first one is the adoption of the Planning Board's recommended modifications to landscaping and activity areas. The second is limiting the design excellence standards to the urban mixed use for downtown and downtown transition zones, including the build to zones, build to width, transparency, parking lot location, and street adjacent entrance requirements. And the third one, the final one, is removing the maximum units per building in all urban residential districts. Thanks for what you do for our community, and thanks for your time.
Thanks for your comments tonight, Mr. Leroy. All right, come on up.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Snorsky, and I am a member of Ward 1, am an MOR member as an appraiser, and who works in the housing industry, and I also volunteer with Pro Housing Missoula. And I have been involved in the community engagement surrounding the land use plan, zoning map, and UDC, and I'm sure you remember seeing me here before. And I just want to thank you for all your time with the neighborhoods and community engagement and stakeholder meetings, and it has been really helpful to be involved and learn along the way. And I also agree with all the great work that has been done and amendments that have been put forward with different stakeholders. And I'd like to highlight the importance of the work and continue to push for the streamlining of the codes and zoning maps, which will allow for flexibility in place types and buildable units. And please try not to encumber the possibility for new housing allowed by adding restrictive heights, landscape requirements, and activity areas, and encouraging you to support the amendments put forth from Pro Housing Missoula to the city staff and council. And as for trees, I do love trees as well, and I love the fact that we have these trees and the landscape requirements that have been here over the time. But, you know, it's also a huge expense as a homeowner when a tree has been planted 50 years prior to me owning the house, and with something that happened 2 years ago, I still can't afford to fix the trees that are over my house and a danger. So it's something to consider. It is great to have trees and landscape requirements, but maybe let the homeowner decide what they want to put there instead of having it be decided by someone else and then we still need to maintain it. So just some things to think about.
Thank you for your comments this evening, Jennifer. Next comment, come on up.
Good evening, Council. My name's Josh Nichols. I'm a Front Step Community Land Trust Board member, and I'm here as an affordable housing advocate. Not going to get into specifics about the code. I'm just here to please ask all of you to continue to keep an eye toward affordable housing and equity as you enter the final stages of this long process you've gone through. I'm a North Side resident, and we really love our neighborhood and where we live. Last count, I think there was 20 kids on either side of the block we live on. There's public educators, parks and rec workers, house painters, you name it, living on either side of that street. Sometimes it feels like our part of town's kind of one of the last bastions of places where young families and people of more modest income can still afford a home and a place to live. In recent years, though, I feel like the North Side's really shouldered a pretty heavy load in housing development and higher density development to try to help this community address that affordable housing need. And we're damn proud of that. We really are. But with that said, it's come with its challenges. I was part of a group of parents that, went before the school district a few years back, just begging them to please pay more attention to Lowell Elementary and the challenges we were facing due to the influx of students with the development and the people we're seeing moving into our neighborhood. We're one of the few schools that's still growing. A lot of the schools are decreasing in enrollment. So I say that to say my understanding of what you're doing with this code reform is to spread the wealth in a sense, and hopefully we can see some other neighborhoods in our community start to shoulder some of that load that we've been shouldering and get more families able to afford to live in other parts of our community. And yeah, again, everything I understand, this code reform is a step in that direction. I haven't seen anyone in a decade run for office at a state or local level who hasn't said affordable housing is the biggest issue facing our community. My hat's off to all of you for following through with what everyone talks about and that actually hopefully make a tangible impact on what this community needs to do going forward. So thank you all. That's all I have.
Appreciate your comments. Thank you, Josh. Come on up.
Andrew Elson, I'm a resident in the Lower Rattlesnake. I mentioned in the planning board, I grew up in Chicago and watched the row houses built for factory workers basically during World War II, an Italian neighborhood be transformed into high-density, low-income high-rises that were going to change the world with activity spaces, playgrounds, all the amenities you want. And if you know anything about Cabrini Green, you know that's a thing of the past. Neighborhood is critical. How do you maintain neighborhood with the changes that are always happening? Changes that have happened in the 40-plus years that I've lived in our home. Seeing the neighborhood change, the widow's gone, the subsistence gardens being replaced by big garages. It's going to change. But what can we do to not lose our neighborhood, not lose our community? Whether it's Lower Rattlesnake, the north side, west side, there's an identity there that's worth preserving. What can the council do to help us help each other be a viable part of the changes that take place? A couple things I'm going to note about the Lower Rattlesnake. One is the traffic is becoming very challenging, morning and evening. It's not going to get better. Whatever we say about walking and riding buses in the Lower Rattlesnake, it's not going to change that. Secondly, it would be easier to absorb some of these changes if we included the whole of the Rattlesnake. There's a lot more land up above us than there is where I live. And even with ADUs and all these other changes, which help with housing, whether it makes a difference in the cost or not is yet to be seen. But if we could share that, we've always worked with the Upper Rattlesnake. We could keep some kind of continuity in the development that's going to take place. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments this evening, Mr. Wilson. Come on up.
Hi, Eli Harmon again, Missoula, East Missoula resident. I just, talking specifically with the zoning that's been imposed on the Aspire subdivision, I would really urge that the council would take a good look at that and change it from what's being proposed right now as high density down to LUR2, which is essentially the rest of all of East Missoula, other than the apartments that have now clogged up all of Highway 2 coming into East Missoula. I recognize a lot of work that's gone into this, and I can appreciate all that. But having heard from many residents from East Missoula, the ones that live out there, the ones that are going to deal with the influx of traffic, and the infrastructure cannot handle the way it's being proposed. Even the Planning Commission has recommended and motioned a couple times that it be changed to LUR2. It doesn't sound like staff is willing to make that consideration or change. As we heard earlier tonight, it sounds like all the other amendments that were presented have been looked at and adopted except for one. It makes it sound like it's been that one. Now, I don't want to sound ugly here, but maybe I'm going to be the devil's advocate, but I'd like to hope that through this whole process of where we're doing this discussion and looking at what everything is, that we're all being transparent, and that perhaps the staff someone isn't telling them, hey, because of that division, as you all know, is in litigation, don't make a single change. That would be wholly unethical if that is actually what's happening. I'd hope that's not what's happening. But nonetheless, what I would like to ask is that every one of you on the council, because you are the ones that hold the power to say one or the other, go out to East Missoula, drive some of those streets, and not just in the middle of the night when no one else is on there. Maybe when there's slick roads, when you're trying to get out on 200. And specifically, drive down Summer Street, because that is the only access that will access that entire new subdivision that's being proposed to be a high-density area. You're told that, 10% is going to go on a tiny little single-lane road along the river there that's already developed. That's inaccurate. So please, go out there, drive it yourself. None of you even probably live out there, so it may not affect you whatsoever, but all of us that do live out there, it will affect. So that's what I ask before you guys, and consider changing that LUR2, because that's what's appropriate for that neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Harmon. Come on up.
Good evening, Council. My name is Thomas McClure. I should note that I'm a member of our Missoula's Community Advisory Group, but tonight I'll be speaking on behalf of Common Good Missoula in my role with the strategy team. I want to thank Council and the staff for working on the land use plan and the Unified Development Code. It was nice to see that image at the fairgrounds all those years ago and see how far we've come. I just want to point out two positives from the land use plan and the development code. Number one, it supports the opportunity for services to be integrated into neighborhoods so residents can walk or bike to meet their daily needs, reducing traffic, climate impacts, and promoting neighborhood cohesiveness. And number two, it made room for second homes. It reduced the loss of land for cars, promoting infiltration of runoff into the aquifer and making room for more units. We look forward to working on further incentives for affordable housing and visitability of units in phase 2. And we would encourage the staff to develop educational materials for the community illustrating how floor area ratio works, the transition from ADUs to second one-unit houses on a single lot, and other tools that might be new to the community. Also want to thank staff and the mayor for their willingness and responsiveness when we've made requests for meetings and holding us accountable and transparent. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Thanks for coming down. Come on up.
Hi, I'm Janet Jacobson Glassy. I'm from Ward 1 in the Lower Rattlesnake. And I'm bummed that we have to be here. I know this is important and that, change has to happen. But I'm going to just put it on the record that I have a lot of concerns about the heights and setbacks proposed in the zoning proposal that you have. I also echo a lot of the concerns the gentleman had ahead of me a couple people ago. I don't think that we're giving enough credit to some of our neighborhoods that already have high density in the alleyways, our ADUs and second-story garages. I totally agree with this gentleman ahead of us on the north side that they have taken on so much more than many of our neighborhoods, and I do agree with that. I walk in that neighborhood a lot, and I actually think that we've gone way too far, and I think it looks funny in some of the places where we built too high. I still feel strongly that we should preserve our single-family home neighborhoods, and I know that's controversial. But once we make the changes and we build these places, we can't go back. And the character of some of our historical neighborhoods and the neighborhood bonds that we have, I feel they should be preserved. So thanks for your time.
Thank you for coming down tonight, Janet. Thanks for your comments.
Hi, my name's Heather Lynch. I'm the Executive Director of Northern Rockies Heritage Center, and I am speaking on their behalf tonight. I'm going to go off script to hopefully save some time. But first and foremost, I just want to thank city staff and council for all of their work on this. As a Missoula native, this is an insane project, and you guys have gone into so much detail to consider everybody, and I really appreciate that. By and large, I'm super happy with the code, and considering the recommendations of staff that were made both on December 2nd and January 5th as it pertains to the Fort Missoula Historic District, I'm incredibly happy. They've recommended that you do not condense or collapse the Civic District 1 and 2 together, which would allow for denser residential. Residential in a small way is allowed within the Fort Missoula district. I'm going off script, which means I'm all over the place, sorry. Northern Rockies Heritage Center has remained categorically opposed to zoning change at Fort Missoula. Our primary mission is to preserve the heritage and integrity of Fort Missoula. Collapsing the civic districts into one would allow for higher density residential, and it would most definitely threaten the integrity of Fort Missoula And as stated by city staff in the January 5th summary, it may undermine the National Register listing, which would undermine its heritage as well. Fort Missoula became a nationally registered historic district in 1987, and the historic Fort Missoula neighborhood overlay was established in the mid-90s by Missoula City. These designations were done through decades of hard work and dedication by countless individuals. We understand the need for land use change, especially in cities with growth like Missoula, but walking back on a distinction specifically put in place to protect an historic resource that took decades to implement and has not reached even one lifetime's worth of care and consideration under those hard-won designations feels premature. So I'm just really grateful that those recommendations were made not to collapse those civic districts and to allow this unified development code to kind of play out throughout the city to allow for these denser residential areas and other areas first. And once again, just thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lynch. Thanks for coming down. Come on up.
Hello, my name is Chris Chitty. I'm a builder, a small developer. I'm with Pro Housing Missoula and I live in the Franklin to Fort neighborhood. I guess I would like to support the passage of the UDC. I think it's been an unprecedented amount of effort that staff have done doing public outreach and due diligence in getting us to this point, and I think we should honor that work and we should pass it pretty much as it is. Nothing's perfect. Everything could change a little bit. I want to say that you're hearing from mostly true believers tonight, myself included, and in your email inboxes. But I'd also like to point out that there's a very unvocal majority of people out there who aren't going to make comment. But we do kind of know how they think about things because we have polls, both national and local, that scientific and pretty valid, that have told us that nearly 2/3 of Missoulians believe that we should take steps to allow affordable housing, even if it means that the character of the neighborhood will change. So I think no matter what you're hearing from the activated minority, it's important to remember that the majority of folks are supportive of building more housing. It's pretty important. The other thing I would like to say is that it is really, it's tempting to think that we can get a free lunch by having development pay for things that we want as a community. And I get why we think that, but I urge you to push back and to think about what it is what are the hidden costs. So I know that nobody in this room would tell you that they don't like trees, that they don't like parks, they don't like green spaces. That's why we live in Missoula. But I think it's important to understand what you're actually going to get from your regulation. Are you going to get the kind of amenities that are really going to make your life better? Or are you going to sort of get lowest common denominator stuff? I would much rather see us build dense, human scale, walkable neighborhoods where a lot of tax base can be put together to build the things that we need to be resilient in the future, like parks, like trails, like stormwater infrastructure, all the things that are hard to afford now with the spread out development pattern that we have. And that's all the time I've got. Thank you.
Good job, Mr. Chitty. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Right on time. All right, come on up.
Hi, I'm Len Broberg, B-R-O-B-E-R-G for the last name, and I'm with Common Good Missoula. You all have seen me before, I'm sure. I'll probably see me again, but hopefully you won't run away from me when you see me. But in any event, thank you, staff. Thank you, council. Thank you, Mayor Davis. This has been an incredible effort over several years now, and really applaud all the hard work that you all are putting in on it. I'm here to say that we support the adoption draft of the UDC with the proposed amendments. There may be a few still to be made. I'm sure you'll take those under serious consideration. But we still need affordable housing, and we still need to have a resilient community when we get done with the whole thing. And a couple of things this plan does, is that it does spread out the burden of having that denser housing beyond the few neighborhoods that are now supporting the majority of it. And that needs to be equitably spread across the community. You've heard this before. I'm from the Patty Canyon Farviews neighborhood. Boy, do we need to take some of that burden. Okay, it is a place that needs to have more density, simply to allow people to live here, to be able to afford to live here, so that the people that service my car, that provide my health care, that do all the other things for me that I need to have done, have a place to live, and can live so affordably. And that means that change is going to happen, and everybody needs to take their fair share of it. We also really like that it's reduced the amount of land that will be used up for cars, and instead that land will be available to soak up rainwater and to provide more housing space. We like that a lot about the plan. And we would agree with the comments of Amy Sillenberg from Climate Smart Missoula about the need for landscaping and green areas that are not paved over or built upon, to soak up what we're going to see coming. This December is where we're going. Unfortunately, it's a change. It's another change we have to deal with, but it's here. And there are more of those that are going to come. And I've got a major stormwater project happening across the street from my house, but that's not going to deal with all of it. So that can't do it by itself. We're going to need to have places to soak up that rainwater. So with that, I urge you to support and approve the UDC as proposed with the amendments you see as appropriate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Broberg. Thanks for coming down. Hi.
Hi. My name is Kate Dinsmore. I am a landscape architect, and I've been part of permitting probably 50 plus landscape projects in Missoula. And I appreciate that many of my comments have been addressed or clarified by staff. I still have a few that I'm concerned about. I worked with several other designers in the community and drafted a letter for changes to the landscape chapter that was submitted and then supported by the planning board. There are a couple things in there that I really want to point out that I think are key, and I would like you to, I'm hoping that you will support that letter as a whole. The first is removing the requirement for activity area for mixed-use development. So this would be consistent with what is currently in Title 20. Activity area is generally not a quality space, and we feel like there's more value in utilizing that space for housing. And the developers that want to have activity area and want to do that as part of their project, they're going to do it anyhow, not because it's required. The other item I really want you to pay attention to is reducing landscaping percentages. This allows for some more flexibility with projects. There are some, and I want to remind you, it's a minimum, it's not a maximum. Some projects just need that extra flexibility to make them happen, and we want to support that so that there can be more housing and that there can be good creative solutions. Another thing, as those changes that were recommended, from my experience, I've seen where there are obstacles in permitting, and so I'm trying to remove some of those obstacles that tend to have little or no impact on the final built project. It just leads to difficulty in permitting it, not what's actually happening at the end and what people are seeing. Also want to clarify that street trees are required on every project, no matter what. And so we're still advocating for trees, and we know the importance of trees for Missoula projects. A couple other things. I'm working with MCPS on their properties plan. We've asked that the Rhinel Road property be changed to be consistent with adjacent properties that are also infrastructure deficient. And we've been working closely with Garden City Harvest, and MCPS, as I've been working with them, is working closely with Garden City Harvest and city staff to make sure that we find a good solution for that property, and we'll continue to work with them, but MCPS does not support a zoning change for that. And if you're interested, there will be a meeting tomorrow. If you want to sit through another long meeting, we'll be discussing it with the board of trustees. Last thing, on Heron's Landing, there are a couple of things with the setbacks, the number of units in row houses, and cottage porch setbacks.
Thank you, Ms. Dinsmore, for all your comments. Really appreciate it. All right, come on up. And bring that microphone down close to you if you wouldn't mind. That would make sure we can hear you. Thank
Is that
you.
better?
Yes, it is.
My name is Linda Ensign. I live in East Missoula. This evening, I would like to address the decision of staff not to accept the motion passed by Missoula Consolidated Planning Board regarding Aspire subdivision. The reason given for that decision seems to be because they had already designated East Missoula UR3 high-density zoning, and they didn't want to create a mishmash. Folks, the golf course directly across from the river is zoned LUR2. Water's Edge development adjacent to Aspire is zoned LUR2. Ben Hughes development to the west is LUR2. And East Missoula is the equivalent of LUR2 under county zoning. The city imposed UR3 high-density designation on East Missoula is what creates the mishmash. A mishmash of out-of-place housing units will spring up throughout our neighborhoods as properties are entered into the city and their zoning changes to UR3. At the fort, the recommendation cited distance to services, and yet East Missoula is 3 times the distance to services, and even then the services are much more limited. I understand that staff is just doing the job council assigned to them. It is your job to balance that against the best interest of each community. It is not in the best interest of East Missoula to be designated UR3. It is not in the best interest of East Missoula community to have Aspire subdivision zoned UR3. I have been involved in meetings regarding Aspire for nearly 4 years. It feels like the council has widely regarded the input of East Missoula community as unwelcome. And yet you have imposed your vision on our community. I respectfully request that you designate all of East Missoula, including Aspire, LUR2, as it should be, and in accordance with the community input you have received.
Thank you for your comments this evening, Linda.
I am Bruce Baxter. I'm going to ask the council again to consider the zoning of East Missoula, the core of East Missoula. The planning staff has designated the core place type as urban residential high, and the zoning is UR3. I live in a large neighborhood, the core of East Missoula, that is completely infilled with 4 or less single-story residential units per acre. This is because we were zoned to that maximum for several decades. Our nearest grocery store is a 3-mile drive away on an 80-year-old narrow highway or on Interstate 90. All of the school children ride buses out of the neighborhood to Rattlesnake, Bonner, or Hellgate High School. It is unsafe to ride a bicycle or walk on Highway 200 or I-90 3 miles to city amenities. East Missoula is surrounded by 4 neighborhoods, all zoned limited urban residential. This meets no definition of high density. The core does not align with high density. And we are wondering why East Missoula is being singled out and targeted as high density. I recognize all the work the planning staff has done, but the planning staff has changed East Missoula's zoning to a much higher density that does not describe the actual land use. The people of East Missoula were not notified of this change. This zoning is a mistake that needs to be corrected. I asked the planning staff or the city council to amend the land use plan to change the land use place type designation to limited urban residential and change the zoning at the core of East Missoula to LUR2 to match the actual land use and match the surrounding neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments this evening, Mr. Baxter. Thanks for coming down. Come on up.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Max Wolf. I'm a private landowner in Fort Missoula. I've had a chance to speak at many of these hearings, and to be honest, I've had enough public comment for a lifetime, and I hope I'm getting somewhere. I'll be very short with this. 7 years ago, we set out to save the Old Post Hospital, and as I said in the LUP meeting, we knew our way forward was always a PUD, but this no longer exists in the new UDC, and I want to emphasize that. What I'm here asking for is a clear code that aligns with our long-range plan, while taking private land into consideration, especially when surrounded by government entities that don't have to follow the same rules. For these reasons, I'm asking you to follow the recommendations of the Planning Board, which is a unanimous vote to replace CD1 to CD2. Thank you for your time and consideration on this.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Wolf.
Hi, good evening. Jim Sayre. I live in the University neighborhood, and I have been working as a member of Pro Housing Missoula, among other groups. I really want to congratulate everybody who's brought the plan to this stage of the game. I want to thank Common Good Missoula because they were so involved in kicking this whole thing off 3 years ago with council, and I just appreciate Len and everybody else that has been involved in the process. I live in the University neighborhood, and I kind of, since I'm maybe the last in-person speaker, I just want to make you feel good. I remember 12 or 14 years ago when this council was considering Councilmember Alex Taft's radical proposal to allow ADUs. Do you remember that, anybody, when that happened? And this room was packed, including with many people from my neighborhood. I can't believe there's nobody else here from the University neighborhood right now. And this is just for ADUs with really stringent requirements, like you had to have a parking pad on your property. There were just so many things that made it so that I think we developed like 6 ADUs a year for the next 2 or 3 years. But the sky didn't fall. We were able to get some more housing. Some of those requirements were removed. And now people are starting to develop ADUs, and now you can not only do ADUs, but you'll by right per state law be allowed to do 2 units on a developable lot in city. And I'm just saying that because this city has come a long way. I mean, we're discussing a significant plan to allow for more equitable, more dense development throughout our city. And I'm going to try and come as much as I can for the amendments on Wednesday, because I think a lot of the devil will be in the details, and you're going to consider many different proposals. But overall, this is the right direction. This is the right direction for our city. It's good in so many ways for housing, for community development, for climate, for our environment, for our open space protection. So overall, I'm looking forward to your adoption of an overall plan. I think it's going to be good for Missoula overall. I'm nervous like everybody because I live in the University neighborhood, and we're talking about UR3, UR4 over on Arthur Ave. And that'll be a significant change. But you know, this community has changed an enormous amount over the last 100 years. Just look at old black and white pictures and you can see it. So it's going to change some more. So let's just have control of it. Let's do it the right way. And I think this plan is going to move us in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments tonight, Jim. Come on up.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brett Boble, and like Jim, I live in University District. I'm a renter there with housemates, and the silent majority that Chris brought up, most of my other housemates are too busy and living their life. And so I wanted to bring it up that median house price, $550K or so, median income's 100 or so, twice as expensive for the median income to be able to afford a house. And so housemates that are born in Montana, went to UM, have jobs now, and don't really have a viable path to like owning a home. And so what I urge you guys, there's going to be a lot of hidden costs, a lot of trade-offs. And at the end of the day, every little one of those adds up, and it's going to be harder to build more affordable starter homes, first places that people can stay. And so when you think about those amendments, think about the people that live near Jim. I love that area. I'd love someday to be able to afford there. There's a bunch of people that are residents that you see all around town that really are price affected. So keep them in mind. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments this evening. Anybody else in the audience wishing to make comment this evening?
Good evening, and thank you for...
Could you go ahead and speak into the Suzette?
My name
There you
is
go.
Suzette Dussault.
There you go. Perfect. Thank you.
Again, thank you for being here and all the hard work and hearing us out. So I'm coming to this table saying that I disagree with the zoning designation for our downtown area. It's the hip strip area in your plan, which is the land use plan developed in 2024 and adopted in 2024, you have a couple of guiding principles. One of them is community and quality of life. And on that quality of life, we talk about the importance of historic context. And so I take exception with the idea of using the downtown and the hip strip as the most dense area in Missoula. Even in your documents, you talk about Missoula being, the downtown being the heart of Missoula, and then you go on to say that it's going to have the tallest and largest buildings. And I have a couple of other ideas for where we can put some tall and large buildings. So the other idea is that I'm very concerned about the lower Rattlesnake and north side, west side. These are areas where people can afford to live. This is where people have historically lived who are able to afford those neighborhoods. They create a community there. They take great pride in their neighborhoods. And I am concerned that we are looking at gentrification of an area that's very, very fragile, that it's where people who can afford to live, and that we are looking at high densities in an area that's going to exacerbate the problem and increase housing to where it's going to be the medium income or the market rate housing, and that's not to me, that's not acceptable. There's also in one of your other documents, it's the addendum to the plan, it's Appendix C. They talk about exactly that, the gentrification of our neighborhoods. So the north side, west side, the Fort Missoula, Franklin to the Fort neighborhoods are very fragile. East Missoula is very fragile as a neighborhood for income folks. So I'm just asking you to please at least follow some of your guidance, your documents, and create other areas in the city. As he said, share the wealth, as Len said. And climate ready is another issue where we're
Thank you, Ms.
creating
Tissot.
urban hotspots, which we, in our climate proposals, we are not supposed to. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments this evening. All right, next comment, come on up.
Hi, I'm Steve Farmer, a longtime current resident of East Missoula and Missoula area. Been here most of my life. The biggest problem I got right now is the Aspire housing development that you guys are about to try and pass or whatever. You need to not do that. That's not cool in East Missoula. That's a small little place, and you're going to bring massive people in there and massive problems. The roads cannot handle that, and neither can the community there. You need to have them go somewhere out of town where you can do that. That's not even going to happen, I don't think. And the other thing is, you need to change from going to UR3 zoning to LUR2, so that can't happen there. And all these small little areas where people are trying to bring massive people in there and housing, you're just going to make a big mess. A lot of people is going to have a lot of problems there. And the roads can't handle it. If you go there, go out in East Missoula, drive around there about 5 or 6 o'clock at night. We'll go there on a weekend when people out there walking their families, their dogs, their little kids with them. How's that going to happen when you bring 500 more people out there or whatever? That's unsafe. That's not cool. You need to listen to the community telling you this, because I've lived there since 1973. You bring 500 more people, 252 units in my backyard there. I live right on Canyon View. The Summers property is going to be Aspire, maybe. You bring all those people in there, 500 plus people, that's not good. There's going to be a lot of problems. So people need to really listen to us. That's why we're here. And I love Missoula. Please don't ruin it. and the community around it. Thank you.
Thanks for coming down and providing your comments this evening. Come on up.
My name's Kristen Newman. I'm from Ward 1. I was asked to come talk a little bit about ADA parking, so I thought I'd just come make a comment on that. Just generally, and then I think just some information to be able to consider for the UDC if necessary. So the ADA standards require accessible spaces only if a parking lot is provided. They don't require accessible spaces where parking is not provided at all. So most local and state codes and regulations address the amount of parking required for a site. So state or local government must establish zoning requirements for at least a minimum amount of parking in order for a site to qualify for accessible parking. And we had a new bill go through amending parking requirements that affect housing over this past legislative session. And it did provide cities to have the agency to codify some form of parking to provide accessible parking in certain situations. So I believe this is an opportunity to prioritize access and visitability in affordable housing. As I understand it, MCA 76-2-304, Section 5C, which goes into effect in October, allows a local government to provide through zoning regulations 1/2 parking space for each residential unit under 1,200 square feet to provide ADA accessible parking. So it hasn't completely banned the ability to provide a minimum amount of parking. It's just that if you choose to provide that access and visibility to housing in that criteria, you are allowed to do that. So choosing access embodies the spirit of the ADA, as I always like to talk about, and the state allows Missoula, the agency of choice through code, to do that. I do strongly believe there's always a middle ground when it comes to accessible parking. I know that parking is always a hot topic, but there are ways to be creative and innovative. So, thank you.
Thank you for your comments tonight, Kristen. Hi, come on up.
Hi. My name's Aiden Judge. I'm from Ward 1, downtown Missoula. And I'd like to start this off saying why I came to Missoula in the first place. I grew up in Kalispell area, the Flathead Valley. And up there, it's just gotten so unbelievably expensive for my family and like the folks I still have up there to just live there. People are getting pushed further and further out because of a lack of affordable housing. People are entirely reliant on a car that can break down at any moment to get places. I mean, I've met people who had to commute to like places like Kalispell and Whitefish from as far as Libby and Eureka for reference. That's insane in my opinion, and I do not want Missoula, my new home, to be anywhere like that. And we have taken steps here to make sure we're not. Missoula does have a good public transit. It does have bike lanes, but with the influx of people we're seeing and the projections we're seeing, I do not want people to have to be pushed out from this community to live in this city. And I believe that whatever is needed, to be pushed through these zoning reform, I believe that whatever it takes, getting rid of raising some of these height requirements and the lowering some of these landscaping requirements, whatever is needed so that people can actually live here, so that people can afford to live in this community that we all love. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments tonight, Aiden. Thanks for coming down. All right. Last call for anybody in the audience before I move to folks that are online. All right. I'll go ahead and check in with folks that are online here. I know there's one person that's been waiting to make their comment. Kirsa Skelke, if you can unmute on your side, I'll go ahead and time you for your 3 minutes comments. Kirsa Skelke.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Go right ahead.
Awesome. Good evening, City Council. My name is Kirsa Shelke. I represent Lee Bridges, an East Missoula community member who has consistently shown up to oppose UR3 zoning in her East Missoula neighborhood. I want to start by acknowledging staff's work and by commending the Planning Board. After extensive public comment and careful deliberation, the Planning Board made 3 targeted recommendations for the Aspire subdivision parcel. I'm here to ask you to consider and vote by motion in favor of these 3 recommendations grounded in the city's own methodology and the proposed UDC. First, amend the land use plan place type for the Aspire parcel from urban residential high to limited urban residential. Staff has explained that place types were assigned using amenity and constraint mapping. By those same maps, East Missoula is not amenity rich, not well connected, and is physically constrained by Mount Jumbo, the Clark Fork, and the interstate. Moreover, Promise Corridor improvements lost funding. Development here will not occur as small incremental infill. It will occur quickly on large underdeveloped parcels. In contrast, urban residential high is reserved for the city's most connected, service-rich neighborhoods. East Missoula does not meet those criteria. Instead, limited urban residential is a better fit for East Missoula. This motion aligns the map with the city's own methodology. Second motion, amend the zoning map for the Aspire parcel from UR3 to LUR1. UR3 is the second highest residential density in the city. The UDC describes it as supporting walkable, transit-accessible neighborhoods with high street connectivity, alleys, and proximity to the city core. None of these conditions exist at the site. The Aspire parcel is isolated, lacks transit and sidewalks, has no grid or alleys, and is surrounded by low-density county neighborhoods and narrow aging infrastructure. Applying UR3 here is inconsistent with Article 4.2 of the proposed UDC. LUR1 is compatible with the limited urban residential place type and with the parcel's existing base zoning. If staff cannot clearly explain using its own methodology how this site meets UR3 standards, then this zoning should be corrected. Third motion, strengthen riparian buffers in section 4.11 of the draft UDC. The draft UDC proposes a 50-foot buffer for the Clark Fork and the Bitterroot. That distance does not align with agency recommendations or available science for protecting riparian function, especially when paired with higher intensity residential zoning. Missoula is a river town. At minimum, the city should adopt 100-foot buffers for the Clark Fork and Blackfoot and 50-foot buffers for other creeks, or require staff to return within a year with science-based recommendations developed with agency and community partners. Council, the Planning Board did a really good job on this. East Missoula residents have shown up and done theirs. These motions correct inconsistencies, reduce safety and environmental risk, and align the maps with the city's own standards.
Thank you for your comments this
I respectfully urge
evening.
you to support the motions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shelke. Thank you. All right. Mike Morgan, we're ready for your comments.
Good evening. You can hear me okay, yes?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Morgan. I'm an architect at Hoffman Morgan and Associates. A few things I just want to try to add for you is I think you've done a wonderful job, a lot of great progress. There's a few things in the details of regulations that do need some attention for housing in our downtown, in our core area of the city. Those things are, especially in the landscaping section, activity area, things like that. There's detail in there that I encourage you to dive into and really focus on. Look at the recommendation from Planning Board. I think they did a fabulous job. And listening to the community and professionals and our suggestions, there's a letter, a unified letter that many professionals worked hard on providing to the Planning Board. Look at that, please. It's got a lot of good tips. In particular, when I say parking, what I mean is it's great that there's not parking required. However, we still need to provide parking for housing. And there are some regulations in there that are going to really encourage people to not provide parking because it's more restrictive than current buffering, for example. On small lots where there's small developments where people want to live,
there's not enough land for those kind of regulations that are stated right now. You need to think more about small developments and what kind of regulations need to apply to those versus larger developments. Allow that parking to go in so we don't put more impact on the streets. Activity also, right now it's about the same as current. We're trying to provide more housing, as staff said earlier today. We're falling well short of housing, and we need that to lighten up a little bit more than currently how those regulations are written. So please look into those really carefully as you get into the details. They're subtle and they're hidden in there, but they're really, really important. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments tonight, Mr. Morgan. All right. We have one more comment online, and that is David Gray.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you very much.
Hello, this is David Gray. I'm an architect here in Missoula. Our Missoula plan has the goal to provide affordable housing for all Missoulians throughout the city, with all neighborhoods sharing the burden. The UDC is failing the citizens of Missoula, meeting that goal in several ways, even though its intent is greater density. Cost of land. One of the major contributors stopping affordable housing in Missoula is the cost of land. In most residential zones, multifamily development is limited to 4 to 8 dwelling units per building, even if the lot can accommodate many more units in a single larger building, which would provide greater affordable and accessible housing. Math does not lie. In the most affordable portions of the city, a scraper's $375,000, and in the university neighborhood, the cost rises to $608,000. If a parcel is limited to 4 dwelling units per building, and only one building will fit on the parcel, meeting the zoning, building, and fire codes, the cost per dwelling unit for land will be between $94,000 and $152,000. If you double the amount of units, which would be allowed in the UR3, the cost per unit for land would be $47,000 to $76,000. That is more than a renter can pay in their rent. It makes it less attainable and affordable for a condo or small home buyer. In the end, dwelling units per building regulations limit accessible, attainable, and equitable housing supply. FAR may be intended to limit the scale of the building, but it does far more than that. Proposed FAR takes away 2/3 of the buildable volume current zoning allows on a parcel, which removes housing choice and economic return, making infill viable. It encourages small efficiency and one-bedroom dwelling units over family-sized dwelling units. If the goal is to limit housing options for families, FAR is the tool for the job. Minimum lot widths. These are new regulations. Staff is suggesting that not less than 40 feet of width Staff is suggesting that lots less than 40 feet in width should not be allowed to have a driveway. So the placement of a boulevard tree takes precedent over housing choice and required business parking. If a bank will not finance a home without parking and a driveway is required to provide that parking, then the housing in that less than 40-foot wide infill lot will not occur. As parking is required for commercial uses such as neighborhood commercial, not allowing a driveway stops land from being developed into these neighborhood desired amenities and a city-centered focused development. I ask you to please amend the proposed language in the UDC and staff recommendations to allow more housing choices, not less, allow more affordable and attainable infill, not less, allow the 7 square miles of the city core with 25 to 30-foot wide lots to have driveways when needed, accessed from the streets. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. Appreciate your comments this evening. All right. Mr. Wolverton, I see your hand is raised. When you're ready. Hopefully you're able to unmute there.
Are you able to hear me now?
We can hear you now. Go right ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, Council. My name is John Wolverton, as opposed to what you saw in the Missoulian, which called me Wolvertone. Sorry I can't be there tonight in person and sporting my legalized housing T-shirt again. but I'm recovering from a mild case of COVID. Hopefully I don't sound too awkward with my stuffy head. I'm a founding volunteer member with Pro Housing Missoula, and I'd like to express much gratitude to the staff for producing great documents, maps, and a great new code. I'm also here to say I'd like to speak for the trees. And in that I'll say, if we continue to focus inward and we proceed briskly with simplification and more compact development, and in this case by eliminating activity areas, reducing landscaping requirements, we'll essentially be saving the trees and the meadows on our fringes and wildlands. Those are the kind of places I'm really interested in having really, really lush landscapes and green spaces. As I mentioned before, a lot of people have talked about neighborhood character. I'd like to express that neighborhood character is not defined by aesthetics. It's really defined by the people who live in the community. If we don't provide the opportunity for the additional number of homes prescribed by our land use plan, the housing costs will not stabilize. Indeed, they are likely to continue rising. In this case, Missoula would become a community reserved for the wealthy, with all the former Missoulians commuting in from the county and Florence. It's a scenario that would really change our community character. So I ask you to please move forward with this UDC and to also give due consideration to the recommended amendments that were sent to you today by Pro Housing Missoula. And thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you for your comments tonight, John, and I hope that you feel better. All right, anybody else online wanting to make public comment this evening? I'm not seeing any hands raised. That last one up is John's. Okay, folks, I think we did it. We have concluded our public comment this evening on both 6.1 and 6.2. Thank you all very much for sticking with us and all of the very helpful public comment this evening. I'll bring it back to City Council to see if there are any council questions or comments. Again, we're not taking a vote tonight, but there is opportunity to ask staff questions or comments, please. Councilor Becerra, please.
Thank you, Mayor. We heard a lot of comment from East Missoula residents and in regards to the Aspire subdivision, and I'm wondering if we could get just a refresher, if you will, on how does the UDC affect what we approved, the project. Can you just walk us through, just so that it's fresh in our minds as we hear these comments?
Yeah, I'm not super familiar with that subdivision approval, but I'll do my best. The subdivision's approved and can be platted as approved. What would change is the zoning, which comes into play at the building permit level for what can get constructed. I know that subdivision was approved with the neighborhood character overlay that allowed them to build some apartment buildings. Under the proposed zoning of UR3, they could move forward with their development plans. It would increase density there. That would be allowable as well. Following Planning Commission's recommendation to reduce the zoning to limited urban would also allow for the density that was proposed for that subdivision, but it would not allow for all of the building types in terms of number of dwelling units per structure.
Thank you.
All right, you bet. And Councilor Nugent.
I was going to ask for the same update. So.
Okay, all right, great. Thank you. Councilor Jordan.
I am just curious if we can, and you may have mentioned this, but amenities came up a lot tonight, and I went to go find a definition of amenities, and I'm just curious if you can tell us what all is included under amenities as we consider different zoning areas.
I'm going to put Mark Hendrickson on the spot. He's online, and hoping he can talk us through. He had kind of a specific list of amenities that he used in his analysis. So, Mark, are you able to chime in on that?
Yeah, Mark Hendrickson, Associate Planner with GIS Focus for CBDI and long-range planning. So the amenities that were used were commuter trails, public parks, public schools, transit, and then also high-frequency transit as another kind of step up in amenities. So it's all transit within, 30 minutes and 60 minutes, and then 15-minute transit. And those are specifically the stops associated with those. And then, let me see, grocery stores, specifically ones that accept WIC, so not all SNAP retailers we designated as grocery stores, because those are things like gas stations and stuff. They can just sell a banana, qualify to, accept SNAP. And then, did I say public schools? Transit, public schools, parks, grocery stores, and I believe that is it. Yeah, I think so.
One follow-up, Mayor, sorry.
Please go right ahead.
Yeah, I am just wondering if we could get that definition put into the UDC language, just so it's there and folks can refer to it. Because I don't know if I was considering all of those when I thought about what amenities are and maybe had a different idea of what amenities mean. So if we could put a definition into it, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Could I follow up on that just with another, just to point folks to where they can find that information on the project webpage and in the record as well, the map methodology memo that has been shared out on eScribe and on the project webpage. On page 3 of that memo lists those specific types of amenities that Mark just walked through and has more information about them in that methodology rundown.
Thank you. I appreciate that. As I look at the terms, I do see we have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different ways that we talk about cannabis. And I think it'd be fantastic if we just threw it in here next to cannabis, because it was like a big set of criteria that we used to create all of these different areas.
Thanks. Mayor asked me to just sit here and manage it while she was out of the room for a second. Mr. McCoy, you had a question.
Well, I just spoke up. I was about to say thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Gwen. I appreciate it. I just wanted to address a couple of more public comment questions. I was hoping staff could refresh my memory on the mailer. My memory is that the mailer was mailed out to the entire county. No, it was just to the East Missoula area. No, where was it? Can we address the mailer?
Sure. So the mailer was intended to be mailed to every physical city address within city limits. And the goal of this was to provide a legal notice to property owners that their zoning would be changing and that this process is happening. And the reason why it was mailed or intended to be mailed specifically to city property owners is those are who that change is affecting at this time. With mailing this on a broad scale, it's really hard to separate out a list of 50,000 addresses, especially when there are mail routes that cover both city and county addresses. So I think what happened was the folks that received them are folks that might have just been part of like a city-county mail route, and those weren't separated out. So that's why we put the notice on our website that said, you might have received this. It was intended to be a specific legal notice to city residents that their property, that the laws around their, or, regulations around their property was changing. So, is that helpful? Yeah.
Yes, great, thank you. It was accidentally included.
Yep, that's correct.
And then, regarding the west side split between UR3 and 4, could you guys maybe go over that again?
I'm going to hand this one over to Mark to maybe pick out why that split happens where it does.
Mark Hendrickson again. So the split in the west side, just let me ask one clarifying question. So there's a split on Bulwer between UR3 and UR4, and then there's a split on Scott Street between Urban Mixed Use 1 and UR4. And then there's also a split kind of near Cooper between Downtown Transition and UR4. So which split are you referring to?
I'm going to hedge on the safe side and say the first two, but not worry about the one closer to downtown.
Yeah, okay. Thanks for the clarification, Sean. So Bulwer is really the split that separates out within walking distance to several different amenities as opposed to just within walking distance to high frequency transit. So east of Bulwer, you're within walking distance to high frequency transit, which is 15-minute turnaround times, walking distance to West Side Park, walking distance to Lowell School, and then also I believe some of it is within walking distance to Yolks Fresh Market, and then also within walking distance to the northern section of the Bitterroot Trail that runs to Fresh Market as well. And then west of Bulwer, where the UR3 is, you're really within walking distance to high frequency transit. So and it doesn't have any constraints within that part of the neighborhood. So we went with the base comparable zoning district of UR3.
Okay, so a difference of amenities is kind of what it sounds like is the shortest answer.
Yes.
Great, thank you for that. And then just one last question. It seemed like the points about ADA standards and parking was a little bit new, and I was curious if we could kind of address the fact that we are eliminating a lot of parking, but we also have those folks in our community that need parking, specifically ADA, and how we're bridging that gap, or if we are, what your guys' thoughts are.
That's something we hope to come back with this coming Wednesday. We need to do a little bit of research on how ADA parking regulations are written and how that interplays with our zoning regulations, since they are covered by other codes outside of this project.
Okay, great. That's all I have for now. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Jones.
Thanks. I actually just had a quick question on the ADA also, and I don't know that you necessarily have the answer, so Wednesday is great. But if we do not have any, we have developments that have no parking requirements, yet a developer voluntarily puts parking in, does that trigger the ADA? Having some proportion or ratio of parking. I don't know, so we can talk about it Wednesday, but I think we are going to need some clarity on how this is going to work. So trying to not throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yes, that is precisely what I want to look into, just to double check. So yeah, we will come back with that later this week.
Great. Thank you. Should be a good discussion. All right. Counselor Krasky.
Thank you. I didn't realize I was up next. I have another ADA.
That's because, sorry, Counselor Becerra's hand was up. So we have another ADA, but just relax for a second. Think about what you were going to ask.
Okay.
And then Counselor Becerra, sorry, my apologies. Sometimes they just kind of float around these hands on the.
About the amenities, do we have a map that shows those amenities? I keep hoping for a visual that I can share with my constituents. When you look for a restaurant near me and all these little things pop up and you can see how far you are from one. Is there something like that we have for amenities so that we can actually see what is being considered an amenity for the density calculation?
Thanks, Ben Brewer, CPDI. We would point you to, that's the quickest way to find that is on the December 3rd LUP meeting that we presented at. We brought a presentation on the mapping approach, and that included a slide deck that includes a breakdown of each of the amenity layers by individual layer, and then together as kind of a composite map of amenity layers. So that's the.
Is that the one that shows just like a hotspot of?
Yeah, it's kind of a heat map of proximity to those mapped amenities.
I think the only concern with that is that then it's not very granular, so the whole thing looks like it's full of amenities, and I'm just wanting to know.
Yeah, and Mark, you may need to jump in here as far as getting the granular data. I think we have one of the interactive maps on the website has some of that information in the pop-up that you can get at a parcel level. Mark, are you on? Is that an option? Otherwise, we might need to go back and kind of see where that information is at that level.
I can confirm that, Ben. It's on our interactive zoning map, our main map of the proposed zoning. If you click on a parcel, it will tell you like what amenities are nearby or listed. That's part of the GIS layer.
Okay, thank you.
All right, excellent. Thanks, folks. Councilor Krask, sorry about that.
No worries. I'm not certain that this question can be answered today, but a constituent brought to me an issue about at what point an elevator for ADA access in a apartment building or a multifamily building pencils out. And so I'm curious if there's information. This constituent mentioned that at 4 stories, it pencils out to put an elevator in, which increases the accessibility in the building to all units versus just the ground floor. And so I don't know if there's an answer to this. I'm assuming not tonight, but if maybe there's some answers to accessibility related to building accessibility and elevators for Wednesday.
Great. Accessibility regulations are within building codes, so it might be helpful for at least a portion of the meeting on Wednesday to have someone from our building staff come and speak to that.
It's a good suggestion. Thank you. Okay, great. Councilor McCoy.
Thank you, Mayor Davis. I found another question from a constituent. There was some concern about, we'll call it the loss of historical overlays. So I was kind of wondering if staff could maybe kind of rediscuss for me how historical overlays have been changed and our use of them has dropped, slightly with the new LUP and UDC.
Yeah, and I'll pass that one over to our historic preservation officer who is online. Elizabeth.
Yeah, sorry about that. Can you actually repeat the question for me?
Yeah, I'm just curious. We have had a lot of historical overlays throughout Missoula in the past, and we are now kind of reducing down to, forgive me, 4 or 5, a much narrower number. And I'm curious about how that is occurring within the UDC and the LUP and why.
Okay. Yeah, I think, Cassie, this is actually going to be a question for you all. We're not actually getting rid of any historic overlays. I think what you're referencing is there used to be other neighborhood character overlays that have been eliminated. And that's what I think, Cassie, I think that's what this question is actually about, because we are not eliminating any historic resource overlays. We're just carrying forward the ones we have related to historic preservation.
Yeah. Oh.
Laval means.
Sorry, Cassie.
No problem, Elizabeth. Laval.
Hi, this is Lavelle Means with the Planning Office. You might also be referring to National Registered Historic Districts that we have. There's no change to that. They're not under city localized zoning regulation. So we have, I don't know, 10 or 11 historic districts that are nationally registered. We have one of those that has been regulated through the choice of city in the past, in the 90s, a zoning overlay, and that remains the same. That hasn't changed. We've made some amendments to it to improve it, to be able to make it supportable for more reinvestment or adaptive reuse, but it's the same tool that we've had. Then there's neighborhood character overlays. This was named a neighborhood character overlay, still doing the same thing as regulation and protection of historic resources there. That was along with other neighborhood character overlays that we do have. That's the form of overlay that Elizabeth was referring to Cassie and team about, where we have removed many of those, finding relatable base zones for it, but the historic resource overlay kept that one intact. So that's the distinction, I guess. There's districts that are elevated through the National Register district naming process, and then there's neighborhood character overlays.
Great, thank you. I think that addresses it. I just couldn't remember because we had this conversation, I don't know, a couple of months ago previously.
Yeah, that's fair. Thanks, Counselor. Counselor Nugent.
Thank you, Mayor Davis. I have a couple questions. First one's a far one. Not like far away, but, far. How do I want to ask this? So right now, in our current code, ADUs are allowed for lots of situations, and that's gotten more permissive every time the council's looked at this over the last decade. Under FAR, in some of our established neighborhoods where the current existing house might bump up close to that FAR threshold, does that just mean an ADU wouldn't be allowed even if it was like over the garage or something like that, or is there an exception for structures like that?
There's not an exception. The garage itself is exempt. That would count towards FAR. Based on our data, most existing homes in Missoula range from 0.2 to 0.4 FAR. The regulations in all districts get above 0.5 once you add 2 or more units, and then much higher as you go above that. So based on staff's calculations, we don't believe adding more units to a parcel should be an issue given our existing home sizes in Missoula.
Okay. Let's see. Just for my for public understanding, what's the minimum lot size where FAR kind of crosses the threshold where it becomes applicable?
Yeah, it's 3,250 square feet. That is the size of our historic, narrow, about 30-foot wide lots in Missoula.
Great. One last question. There's been a lot of public comment and a lot of feedback we've received, just kind of trying to track what regulations are allowable and how projects kind of are impacted by that. And we've seen numbers kind of go up and down. There was some comments earlier, and sorry, I'm just trying to follow my notes. I've been typing on my phone and my computer and all that. But there was some comments earlier about standards killing certain projects in, let's see, mixed use, kind of senior housing was, I think, the example, but kind of broader. But I'm kind of under the impression that residential is exempt from some of that. Could you speak to that a little bit more? Is that enough to prompt you? Because I can, yeah.
I think so. I believe you're referring to the comment about the senior living, saying
Yes.
that they would lose units. Just looked into that real quick. That was a conditional use for group living. It's not considered an apartment building, and group living is permitted in the new district, which is UR4. Group living, since it functions differently than normal housing, it doesn't have full dwelling units, is allowed to use the highest FAR permitted in the district. Even if this were an apartment building, and UR4, they could build up to a 1.2 FAR is the amendment proposed by staff and planning commission. I did some rough calculations. I couldn't find a really reliable square footage for the building in the short amount of time I had, but I believe at most, the new zoning district on that parcel might knock off about 1,000 square feet of gross floor area. It currently has 36 sort of group living units, which are likely small, so it could be a reduction of 1 or 2 units at most. But it's pretty similar in what would be permitted there.
Thank you. I might have more questions on that, but it's late right now, so that's good for a start.
Okay, excellent. Thanks for the great questions. Maybe another round here to see if there's any additional questions before we wrap up these agenda items for the evening. Again, knowing that there are lots of questions and engagement on Wednesday, so this certainly is not your last opportunity as council to ask questions or make comments. Councilor Nugent?
Yeah, without objection, I would like to refer these back to committee starting on Wednesday.
Excellent, thank you. So without objection, anybody have objection to return these to committee? All right. I'm not seeing any. Then these two items, 3 motions will return to committee January 14th. Thank you very much. That does then wrap up the our Missoula 2045 land use plan amendments and our Unified Development Code and zoning map. Thank you all to members of the public. We still have some agenda items this evening on our City Council agenda. Thank you to those that came down specifically for this. We appreciate your engagement very much. And with that, we'll go ahead and I'm not going to be taking any particular specific breaks this evening, so if anybody needs to stand up like I did, please go right ahead and do that. We're going to continue to move forward with our agenda this evening. We do not have any new business this evening. And we'll go ahead and move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda does have several items listed on it, and I'll mention for the public here that items on the consent agenda were approved in city council committees to be placed on the consent agenda to save time at council meetings by voting on them as a package. The city clerk will read the list aloud, so citizens watching on MCAT will know what is on the consent agenda. We'll invite community comment on these items before we vote. Okay. Ms. Trimble, when you're ready.
All right. On this evening's consent agenda, we have a motion to approve accounts payable or claims for checks dated January 13th, 2026 in the amount of $1,060,481.85. We have a motion to authorize the mayor to sign the Higgins Zootown Conoco at 2125 South Higgins Avenue City and MDT maintenance agreement, and any other city agreements with the property owner necessary to protect the city. We have a motion to approve and authorize the mayor to sign a contract with Western Montana Engineering, Inc. for $25,250, and this contract is for the Phase 2 of the heating system for the Missoula Fire Department Station 1 HVAC engineering. We have a motion to approve a resolution granting the approval of an amendment to the City of Missoula's Home Investment Partnership Program and the Community Development Block Grant Action Plan, providing additional funds to the Lenox Flats Rehabilitation Project and providing funds for the acquisition of a 6-unit affordable housing property for placement into a community land trust, directing staff to negotiate contracts and agreements, and authorizing the mayor to sign the contracts and agreements with said organizations. We have a motion to approve and authorize the mayor to sign the amended and restated conservation easement with Higgins Waterfront LLC for the property located at 500 South Higgins, east of Fairtracks Bridge, immediately south of and adjacent to the Clark Fork River. We have a motion to approve a resolution of the City Council of Missoula supporting a shared investment partnership with Missoula County Public Schools to improve student achievement and community health outcomes. We have a motion to adopt a resolution to annex and incorporate within the boundaries of the City of Missoula land described as Tracts 1 and 13 of Certificate of Survey number 6982, Tract 8A of Certificate of Survey number 6995, tracks 2B and 4B of Certificate of Survey number 7035, and an adjacent right-of-way, all located in Section 8, Township 13 North, Range 19 West, Missoula County, Montana, PMM, containing approximately 93 acres, plus right-of-way, as shown on Exhibit A, being subject to all easements or right-of-ways existing or of record, and zone the property M1-2 Limited Industrial based on the findings of fact and the staff report and memo number 2, subject to the recommended conditions of annexation and approval, and this is for the commonly known as address of 3300 Razor Drive. And that is the end of the consent agenda.
Thank you very much, Claire. These are the items that we have on our consent agenda this evening, and I will open it up to public comment on the consent agenda. Any public comment on the consent agenda this evening? Any items that are on the consent agenda? I'm not seeing any in the audience here. Check online to see if we have any public comment on the consent agenda. Okay, I'm not seeing any online either. Do any council members wish to separate any items on the consent agenda or abstain from voting? All right. All right. Okay, I'm not seeing any. Then it looks like, Ms. Trimble, we can move forward with a voice vote for all items on the consent agenda, please.
All right, voting on this evening's consent agenda, all in favor, say aye.
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 And any opposed? Hearing none, that passes unanimously.
Excellent. Thank you all very much. I know there are some members in the audience that were here to make sure that the consent agenda passed. Thank you. Next time I could probably adjust that so I can ask council if that was okay. Thanks for sticking it out. Glad you got to hear all about the Unified Development Code, and now that this parcel is annexed into the city, it's very applicable. So it all makes sense that you listen to the staff reports and community comment. Thank you very much for sticking that out. Appreciate it. We have no regular business items this evening, folks, and so we do now have another opportunity for public comment for items that are not on the agenda. If you haven't had a chance to speak on items not on the agenda, now is your time. Any public comment for items not on the agenda?
This is Kristen Newman. I made a public comment about the ADA parking, and there may be a discrepancy depending on the population size of the city and how that applies. So I just wanted to say that I may have misspoke, but it's something definitely to be researching more into. Thank you.
Great. We'll make sure we do that. Thank you very much, Kristen. Appreciate that. Appreciate that clarification too. Thanks for your advocacy. Anybody else wishing to make public comment on items not on the agenda? Okay, I'm not seeing any in the audience, and I'll just check online quick to see if there's anybody online. No hands are raised online. That wraps up our public comment for items not on the agenda. Communications from the mayor. I just want to thank our staff for the incredible amount of work. It was really wonderful to see the number of folks recognizing your efforts this evening, and I just wanted to echo that. Very much appreciate the amount of effort that you have made to date, and you will continue to make as we work through this process. I know I want to also thank the city council. You have a tremendous amount on your plates as you consider this Unified Development Code, the amount of amendments. I think that there's been some really careful work and thoughtful work that the staff has made after hearing from the public and a lot of differing opinion, as you heard this evening, and a lot to consider. And I'm hopeful that that has helped organize considerations, but nevertheless, there's some policy considerations and some things that you'll have to make as city council. And I just want to express my gratitude and appreciation for the amount of effort that you have made and will continue to make as we see this through the finish line. So thank you. Thank you for all of that. And with that, I will hand it over to your comments this evening. And Councilor Jordan, I'll start with you to see if you have any council comments this evening.
I'm going to be brief and pass.
Okay, thank you. And Councilor McCoy?
I'll pass.
Okay. And Councilor Campbell?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll pass as well.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Nugent?
I promise you all will take a lunch break sometime during that giant LUP block on Wednesday. And if we run out of things to talk about, it won't go all day. But wanted you to set it aside because obviously there's a lot to consider. So probably sometime after 11:30 for lunch.
Thanks for that. That's helpful. Bring snacks. Counselor Jones?
Want you to order pizza.
Pizza party. All right. And Counselor Savage?
I'll pass, thank you.
You bet. Counselor Becerra?
I'll pass, thank you.
You bet. Counselor Ponton?
Thanks, Mayor Davis. I'll pass tonight.
All right. Counselor Krask?
I just wanted to express my gratitude for the people that came down and gave public comment and were engaged in the process. And I know most people have gone, but it takes a lot to spend the time on an evening and engage. And I'm just really grateful for everybody making their voice heard.
Great, thank you. Counselor Nelson? Okay. Counselor Anderson, online. Any comments this evening?
Yes, I'd like to read an excerpt of The Art of Soviet Brainwashing. No, I'm just joking. I'll pass. Thanks so much this evening.
Thank you. All right, folks, that does wrap up. A little bit of humor there to wrap up our evening. I will happily conclude our commented and thorough meeting. Again, thanks everybody for your comments this evening and your engagement, 9:56 p.m. Thank you. Okay.